Hello, hello, hello. Pardon me. Just making sure stream's working. Call. In about a minute. How's everyone doing? I guess people aren't in here yet. This time definitely nobody can accuse me of being late. I was at 4 though. Well, Kauffman had to move it an hour earlier. So, I mean, hopefully this gives us more time. I mean, he's a busy guy, so that might not be how it works out. We'll see how much time we get. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? I just heard something from your end, I think.
Man, I'm too old for Discord.
Ah, there we
I don't
go.
understand what's happening. I feel like maybe I'm supposed to hear you and I don't.
Oh, shit.
It said my device was working. Let me do a sound test on Discord. Every time I open Discord, I feel like I'm like 70 years old, maybe 80. I test. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
I like to think that everyone on YouTube is enjoying this. So,
Well, this is...
all right, let me plug in these big giant headphones. That'll probably fix it. All right, we're doing the headphones.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
All right, yeah.
There we go. Brilliant.
We're good. All right. I so sorry for the technical difficulties.
No worries. No worries. Just as a heads up, my camera is on, but it's only on OBS. I can't send it to both places simultaneously, so you're gonna have to deal with just my profile picture.
All good. All good.
All right, so how are you doing, I suppose?
I'm doing well. I was at a tech freedom summit here in New Hampshire today, and I popped home to do this podcast. So it's been an interesting day. I've been talking to and meeting a lot of people.
Hell yeah. So I have some prepared questions here. I was thinking if there's time at the end, we could have like questions from like super chats if you're open to that, if we got enough time.
So I have got about 45 minutes total. We can go fast. I can keep my answers short. I can also talk pretty fast, but I've got to get out of here in about 45 minutes. And I wish I'd given you more time. We can do another one if you want in the future, but I kind of screwed up today, my scheduling a little bit today. So yeah, I've got to get out of here in about 45 minutes.
All right, so let's try quick fire these ones. So first of all, LPNH has been very, very, very successful, more successful than any other affiliate, at least as far as social media is concerned. So like kind of what does that look like on the back end? What kinds of procedures have been put in place to allow that to happen?
Practically none, which of course is the best procedure. You know, I've done a lot of interesting things in my life, and one of the things that I've learned is you succeed by selecting for people. So there's this misunderstanding that I make all the LPNH tweets. I don't. In the past year, I probably made less than 30% of them. There are times where I've been higher than that, but what I've done is tried to find people who I think are good posters and said, go wild. You know, I think that you get really good results. You know, all of my companies have succeeded because I found the right people and I've gotten out of the way, you know, and so I don't do that much for LPNH. There's all these other people who do the things. You know, I help coordinate things. You know, obviously when there's a time for someone to be responsible, that's me now that I'm chair, and I do think that I am responsible for the things that come out of the account ultimately. You know, buck stops with me. That's what it means to be the guy. But I have done very little beyond select for the right people and get out of the way.
Perfect. So on the LNC motion to disaffiliate, they had like three main claims. Like the big headline one was about, apologies if we are rushing through this a bit, unfortunately.
No, let's do it.
So their big headline was the public endorsement of Donald Trump in 2014, which they claimed violated the bylaws. So what is the current LPNH leadership view of that endorsement, and whether or not that was appropriately dealt with internally in your viewpoint?
Yeah, I think it's fair to read the Trump endorsement as a violation of the Libertarian Party bylaws. I think if there's anything that, well, maybe I wouldn't say if there's anything that it means to be a libertarian, but certainly a core part of what it means to be a libertarian is to take rules and procedures and these kinds of things seriously. And I think it is fair to judge the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire as it being inappropriate for them to have endorsed Trump. But the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire rectified that itself. Every single executive committee member who voted to endorse Trump was replaced at the very next convention. I didn't vote to endorse Trump. It was a controversial vote. It passed 3-1. So there were only 4 people who even voted on it. It passed 3-1. The one against ended up as the next chair, and the 3 who voted for it were off the LPNH executive committee. So, you know, we kind of thought it was over. This is something that happened more than 2 years ago. The LNC had plenty of time to act on it. I've only been the chair of LPNH since, I don't know if it was the end of February or the beginning of March, so less than 6 months. None of this happened under my leadership. I didn't vote for it myself. So, you know, I can understand not liking that we did this, but the LNC already went through like it's all just fake. Like it's all fake. What the LNC doesn't like is that we violate progressive shibboleths. We don't talk like progressives. The LNC elected the new Libertarian Party leadership. Like, they filled the Libertarian Party store with like gay t-shirts and what libertarianism means is to be transgender and like this type of stuff. They don't like that we acknowledge that, intelligence is real and races differ in intelligence. They don't like that we don't celebrate being gay because something like half to 2/3 of the current LNC are homosexuals. This is what they don't like about us. All the other stuff is a pretext. So, do we want to, did the Trump endorsement violate the rules? Yeah, I would say that it did. But that's not what any of this is about. And anyone who's trying to claim that this is what it's about, is kind of not observing reality.
Yeah, so one of the things that came up in the Judicial Committee hearing, which people can go watch on YouTube in full, it was live streamed, the whole thing. One of the things that came out in that was that the LNC wanted to do this, or I can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but they didn't have the votes at the time. And so now that they had the votes, then they did it. So was this something that was like public knowledge on the floor? Like, oh, we're going to try and get the votes to get rid of LPNH, and like that's what this new committee is running on? Or was this kind of like behind the scenes?
It was entirely behind the scenes. So I'll give you an example. LPNH, we had our 14 delegates at convention, and we have the most delegates per capita of any state at the LNC convention because we are the most successful state affiliate. We had a member of our crew who's not a hardcore LPNH guy. He doesn't always like the way that we're kind of, brash or in your face or whatever. And he was interested in voting for the current LNC chair, the homosexual criminal tattooed guy, Evan or whatever. And I was like, Rich, I think that guy might kick us out if you vote for him. And Rich, the guy, he's like, he doesn't want to do that. He just wants to make the Libertarian Party better. And so, they were very two-faced. This is what drives me crazy about this stuff. And it does, I don't want to let the losers win, but it does make me not want to be involved in this stuff. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always stayed away from politics. Politics is so awful. You get so many snaky people. It's like when you're an entrepreneur, your product succeeds in the marketplace, your graph goes up or it goes down, you make money or you don't, but you deal with reality, you're in charge. The LP is like the opposite of this. It's all of these liars and snakes and awful people who will just lie to your face and do something else. Like, the quality of person inside the current Libertarian Party is so awful. Like, I can understand people not liking me. I can understand people not, that's fine. But something that people don't accuse me of is being a liar or being a snake. Like, where I stand at all times. What I believe comes out of my mouth. I'm not doing this two-faced stuff. And it's so much two-faced, lying snake behavior, theater kid behavior, and it's not even smart. They're all like midwit theater kid snakes. So they didn't admit that they were doing any of this. They were gathering in their group chats. They had all their private group chats where they were planning all this and plotting all this. But there's someone who leaked a whole bunch of audio where this was on, it's on Bryce Don's X account. Someone recorded them talking, and they were plotting, well in advance that this was the entire purpose of convention, was to disaffiliate LPNH. This is what the Libertarian Party has become. This is what they care about. They're not trying to achieve libertarianism. They're not trying to advance liberty. The entire plot was get rid of LPNH, the most libertarian affiliate in the most libertarian state, the only state affiliate that's making any difference, that's getting any attention. We've got to chop their head off. It's I'm very competitive, so I'm like reticent to walk away. But these aren't people that can build anything. They're awful people.
So another thing that came up, and this kind of relates to their third claim. I kind of put the first two claims into one. Time constraints, unfortunately, for the LNC if they're watching. Try to do a better job of this in future. I don't know. But their third claim seemed to me the most vague. And this was something that came out in the hearing, was they said that you've, quote, LPNH has, quote, espoused numerous anti-libertarian positions on a national level. And then they also had an and more after that, which, so I want to know, has the LNC at any point leading up to the motion or even since the motion given you like specific details on what those positions are, like specific citations of like LPNH is saying this here, and this is in contravention to our principles, blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only thing was the Trump endorsement, which our party already rectified. We already replaced leadership. We even put out a repudiation of the Trump statement. So the current LPNH XCOM said, we don't stand by this. We think it is not valid. This is not our current position. The current LPNH does not endorse Trump. And this is, something that I believe strongly is if you want people to follow you, if you want people to respect you, you have to be better. If the Libertarian Party wants people to join it and participate in it, then the way that it conducts justice, the way that it makes decisions, this has to be a procedure which is better than the status quo. I have a company, had have a company that went through the rigor with the federal government. 5 years of negotiations with the SEC. We spent millions of dollars. We ultimately went to a battle in federal court. It was very expensive. It went on for a long time. The federal government treated me better than the Libertarian Party did. They had better standards of evidence production. They had better procedures of fairness. And so it's like, this is an anti-government entity that in its own internal procedures is worse than the federal government. You're dead. Like, the internal procedures of the Libertarian Party have to be better than the procedures of the United States federal government. That's the floor of whether what you're going to do gets anywhere. And that's not even me saying I'm right or that we should have won. But anyone who would look at this procedurally, it's like, this is a bunch of theater kids who were mad and couldn't even perform basic rigor. Like, I had a judge in my case who I could tell didn't like us, but he was at least rigorous. He at least like presented rigor and did these kinds of things and was like at least a little bit thoughtful. This was worse. And so it shows how dead the Libertarian Party is as a movement. It's like, you have to be better than the status quo. And also, by the way, I can tell that you want to just rapid fire questions. So if I'm taking too long, cut me off. And you know that you're welcome to disagree with me as well. Like, you can call me an idiot on the podcast. I'll still like you. I know you're an opinionated guy. I know you're a smart, opinionated guy. Like, push back, ask questions, be skeptical. It's a much better show, Yeah,
no worries. I mean, it is rapid fire, but of course, I've been public that I am not in support of disaffiliation, certainly not. I've had my disagreements with you. I've had my disagreements with other people at LPNH. But I think, something that people need to recognize, for this interview, I try to be, as unbiased as possible. I'm just trying to ask, get the facts out there. But obviously, I watched the whole stream and I did not agree with the Judicial Committee's decision. And something in that stream that's really heavily emphasized by Hewitt, I believe, was the LPNH guy there. Is this notion of for cause, that you can only be disaffiliated for cause, and that requires like specific things like an investigation, notice beforehand so that there some sort of curative measures can be put in place, which was done in the case of I believe it was New Mexico by Angela McArdle's LNC. That those types of procedures were taking place. And it sounds like none of that did happen. They just kind of sprung this on you. But I suppose, is your viewpoint on this that like they're even being honest about what their dispute is with LPNH, that these reasons they state in their motion are like the real motivating factors behind it?
No, not at all. And this is the problem, is that they're not, there isn't an ounce of honesty in these people. LPNH had a meeting with Stephen Nicolia. something like 18 months ago, and it was like, okay, you disagree with us, but let's lean, like the conclusion of this discussion was, okay, let's lean into it. Like, we'll be respectful. Let's have debates. Let's showcase that when libertarians disagree, we're thoughtful and we engage in the discussion of ideas. And, Nicalia and the other guy on the call, Paul Dar, they were like, yeah, we're going to do this. We'll talk to LPNH. We'll showcase the issues. Because again, I think it's perfectly fine to disagree with LPNH. I think it's perfectly fine to disagree with me. I think there's no problem. Nothing that I've ever demanded, nothing that LPNH has ever demanded is that everything we say is right and true. This kind of thinking is crazy. By education and by disposition, I'm a physicist. I like going through the evidence. I like sorting through claims. This is why I know that there's some of your audience that doesn't like me, but I even like the people in your audience who don't like me because they have this disposition. They're curious about what's true. They want to find the truth, and maybe their truth seeking has led them to think that I'm a retarded prag or whatever. I don't even know the language that your audience all uses, but they still nonetheless at least have the disposition of the kind of person that I like. These people, the people who did all this, they're not remotely close to this. They are like, we think libertarianism is important because it allows you to be like a transgendered bum and to be a crappy person in public parks. And this is why we're libertarians, and we've never read a book. We don't care to argue with you. We're just gonna, and this is what loser behavior does, right? Like when truth is on your side, when rationality is on your side, you're like, I'll have the public conversation. When it's not on your side, you gather in back rooms, you do the cancel culture, kind of thing. And this is exactly what they did. There was never, at any point, a single time, there was any open discussion. Not at the LNC meeting, not at the judicial hearing, not at any point. The gay LP candidate for president, what was his name? Chase Oliver. Chase Oliver was like, he was invited to go on Timcast with me. He declined going on Timcast because I would be there. He's been invited to other prominent podcasts with me. He won't go on. He simultaneously believes that we're like evil fascists, but could never exchange a word in public with me or anyone else. And when you see that people can't do this, when they can't engage in a public exchange of their ideas, you can pretty much tell that they're wrong. Like, I will talk to anyone. I went on Fakertarians like 4 years ago and took them on 8-on-1 because I'm confident in my ideas. I could take on any number of people and talk about my ideas. There's no quantity that would be too many. But these people, they live in the agreeable mindset. For them, truth is socially determined. And it's very difficult to reason or deal with people like this.
So to sort of speak to some of those people, I mean, I got a lot of flack from my audience when I initially came out in support of LPNH against the disaffiliation. So I wanted to kind of get some of the arguments they were making. I didn't get any specifics on them supporting disaffiliation necessarily. I believe there definitely are those people out there, but I wasn't able to get them, at least when I put out the signal earlier today. But so what would you say specifically to this type of the anti-pragmatist people who are perhaps in my audience, who are opposed to some of the things LPNH says?
Well, I would prefer to discuss specifics to discussing a vague cloud of like people who don't like what LPNH said. One of the things I'll also find is like, you'll find these people who don't like what LPNH said, and they'll like 8 other things that LPNH said that are also unpopular. And so they didn't like one other thing that was unpopular. And so I think it is really important to go through, one by one. To me, pragmatists, and it's funny because inside of the LP, we're supposed to be like the anti-pragmatist caucus, but I do not find pragmatism, I do not find consequentialism to be inherently dirty words or inherently dirty concepts. I have a pretty constrained view of what I'm trying to accomplish. I live in New Hampshire. as part of the Free State movement. New Hampshire is the most libertarian and freest state in America. It's arguably the freest state in the world. That could be maybe contested. I see my role as advancing the ball. I want LPNH to help advance the ball. I am not against these more abstract philosophical types of arguments. I have a bunch of that background myself, but I am, I have a family. I have 4 kids. I want the world to be a better place for them. I am much less interested. 20 years ago, I would have been way more interested in the abstract philosophical arguments, and we could argue about flagpole scenarios and lifeboat scenarios. Like, I read all this stuff, I consumed all of it. Like, I'm not the kind of person who just came to the libertarian movement, because there's a flag that I could wear. Like, I've been steeped in this stuff. I'm an internet libertarian nerd from a very early era, and the conclusion that I've ultimately reached, which I'd be happy to defend, are that it makes way more sense to figure out how I can advance the ball in the real world than to argue about these kinds of theoretical kinds of things. If people want to talk about specific claims, or if you want to raise specific claims, we can go through them. But yeah, I am much more interested in advancing liberty in the real world as I see it than sort of philosophical purism. I understand that you yourself or members of your audience may see this type of, quote, pragmatism as the road to hell, etc. I see it as this is the best place in the world to live, and we're making it better.
So I might pick that back up again, just if we've got time in the end. But I did want my questions to be mostly focused on the disaffiliation itself, rather than let's ask Jeremy,
No. You should push back. I know I'm saying things that you might disagree with. I invite you to push back.
No, I'm fine pushing back on this stuff. I just wanted to the main focus being on getting through my questions on disaffiliation.
You can keep going.
Okay.
Well, they're not allowed to play the game they made. Yes, we are. No, because Mom said we're not allowed to turn on any screens.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. So, what specifically is disaffiliation meaning? What specifically happens to LPNH? What specifically changes?
The 2 biggest things is they do have a somewhat credible claim, or at least a potentially credible claim. If you guys want to be on the show, you can be on the show, but it does mean other people will see your faces. Do you guys want to come on the show? Do you want to come and talk? All right. It does mean that there will be a fairly credible legal claim that we can't use Libertarian Party. That's the trademark of the National Libertarian Party. It will eliminate our ability as a state affiliate to participate in the National Libertarian Party governance. Those are the 2 big things. They don't take our X account, they don't take our bank account, they don't take any of our property, but we would be inhibited in our ability to use the phrase Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, or that would be a legal battle over whether we can or not. And we will no longer be able to participate in governance of the National Libertarian Party itself.
Okay, so what would be your main issue then with just going ahead and disaffiliating? If the National Libertarian Party is dysfunctional, if it is terrible, if it's all these things, why not just have a New Hampshire party? Is it because you'd be forced to, under threat of law, to be getting rid of your name and stuff like that?
Well, I think I'm a big believer in the Free State movement. I am admittedly not a believer in the National Libertarian Party. Part of what's important, part of why I think the Free State movement works, is we're realists about power. And we say, we will march through the institutions. We'll take control over whatever we can. We will bend it to our will. The Zuluites can kind of debate, so for example, suppose that, the New Hampshire state government could appoint an aligned person as the director of tourism, and this person is taking the budget and using this budget to advance a libertarian agenda of New Hampshire. Is this immoral behavior because he or she is spending government, tax money? Or is this good? I'm on team this is good, right? Like I want to advance. I think that the sort of deontological, philosophical type of thinking, I do think this is valuable. I don't disregard it, but I want to advance. I'm here to advance. That's what I want to do. So what is LPNH if it's not an affiliate of the Libertarian Party? Part of what made LPNH interesting is that here we had a Libertarian affiliate who was willing to say these true things that were sometimes unpopular, who was willing to be a bold defender of property rights, that was willing to say, yeah, you're allowed to defend yourself, that was, willing to not kowtow to the sort of progressive, regime. That was what mattered. Part of why the Libertarian, in fact, maybe the single biggest reason the Libertarian movement is struggling in America. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in America, the word libertarian is defined by the Libertarian Party. And so if you have a bunch of left-wing, trans the kids, criminality is okay, we want infinite mammalians as our neighbors, and that's the definition of libertarianism, of course other libertarians are not going to use that word. The amount of Republicans in New Hampshire I've met who are like, yeah, I'm a libertarian, but I get concerned about using that word. That's part of the problem that we were trying to fix.
So how would you respond? Because I had a Free Stater ask me this. So at least I believe he's a Free Stater. One of his questions was, he was wanting to know, why are you, using resources to fight the disaffiliation rather than spending those resources specifically in New Hampshire, get New Hampshire Liberty projects done? Is it because of the access to the potential national resources on that level?
Look, LPNH has become the single best recruiter of libertarians to move to New Hampshire in America. We drained the entire leadership of the Libertarian Party of Vermont. All of them came to New Hampshire. We have people, and this isn't myself, this is people like Dennis Pratt, this is other people who work inside the Free State Project. LPNH is near the top of most cited as to why people were curious about New Hampshire or why people wanted to come and visit New Hampshire. So LPNH has been driving the acceleration of the movement. Libertarianism is an increasingly unpopular ideology. I'm not excited about that. I think the core libertarian ideas of, free market, voluntary association, these kinds of principles, I don't think they're any less true today than they were in the past. But fewer people identify as libertarian. Libertarianism has just less and less pull. And LPNH inside of the Free State movement is doing a better job than the Free State Project, who are my enemies, but they're doing a better job than the Free State Project in terms of getting people to come visit New Hampshire, to come check out New Hampshire. And this is what it's about. This is early. Political changes are downstream of demographic changes, and that's not a racial thing. I mean political demographics. Okay, the more that our state population is libertarian, the more it's a downhill battle to get the changes that we want. And so I see that as the most important thing. My own behavior, my own actions, LPNH's behavior. We want bad people to leave. We want good people to come. That is the most important thing. Can we advance change into New Hampshire? Yes. And we should do that, and we do spend resources on that. But changing the demographics is the thing that changes everything else.
So I would question that. Not on the specifics. Obviously, if you have more libertarians in an area, then that area will become more libertarian. But I think then that begs the question, well, is the downstream political changes, is it not truly then downstream of whatever philosophy is operative? And so then is that not an argument for, my type of position that we should be very strong on the philosophy and, convincing the philosophers, and then everything else is downstream of that?
No, I don't think there's, I agree with that. I think those positions are like relatively consistent. I do. And if there's I would accept the criticism that perhaps myself or LPNH don't talk about the philosophy enough. I would receive that criticism and say there might be something to that criticism. But yes, the idea is a certain percentage of the population is relatively, we could call them intransigent, they're highly disagreeable, their positions are strongly held. A tremendous amount of the population, much larger than the intransigent population, kind of goes along to get along. And so we want our people to be influencing the more agreeable portion of the population. We don't ultimately influence them via our sound philosophical arguments or whatever else. We move them by having enough density, by creating the right kinds of outcomes. But it is absolutely important, like to the extent that the types of people who strongly hold their positions, moving them is that much more valuable, because it is true that other people move downstream of those people. So like, I agree to the extent that we can, convince open-minded, rational people to become libertarians, it is of outsized value to, persuade those.
So is there anything else about all of this that you think, actually I'll do that question. I missed a question, unfortunately. I'm trying to read through it too quickly. What plans do you have on, if the LNC is successful and Libertarian Party of New Hampshire is no more, what do you have, what is like the next step there? Do you have like plans on like branding, plans on like, keeping going as your own party, or are you just guys going to like jump ship to like whatever the next New Hampshire affiliate will be?
Well, we have the X account. The X account is of substantial value. If you looked at what would the free market price be for the impressions that LPNH can generate each month, it would be something like $20,000 a month, $20,000 to $50,000 a month. Like, there's a substantial amount of value in the reach that LPNH can just have organically. And that's something that we built. That's something that remains ours no matter what. And that's something that we will find the way to make use of no matter what. I think it's an open question whether the Libertarian Party is salvageable to some degree, or whether they're just going to go the way of, the Green Party, or, it is remarkable the way that these parties drift towards insane leftism, right? Like, the Green Party was supposed to be about the environment, and now it's insane leftism. And like, the Libertarian Party was supposed to be about private property and all these things, and now it's just insane leftism. And, I'm open to making a push for the Libertarian Party itself. I do think there are way more small L libertarians who agree with us than there are who don't agree with us. I think the Mises Caucus, while it was a positive force for the Libertarian Party, and I like a lot of people involved in it, they still kind of continue to offer or sell a kind of like false hope, like that we're going to run Dave Smith for president, or now they're like, we're going to run Thomas Massey for president. And it's like, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. And so I am intrigued by making a pitch to libertarians around America that's like, yeah, look, the Libertarian Party is worthless, but these jerks control what everyone thinks of the word libertarian. I mean, again, this is the value. This is the value that I saw. This is why I got involved in LPNH, because who has outsized influence on what people in New Hampshire think what is a libertarian? The party that has libertarian in the name. So by being the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, we had outsized impact on what people in New Hampshire thought it meant to be a libertarian. The reason that libertarianism is struggling is because the Libertarian Party, which is I'm not claiming they're, quote, not libertarian, but they're very culturally left. They're very outside the mainstream libertarian opinion in terms of how they communicate and how they talk. They are who defines libertarianism for the average person. It's in their name. And good luck getting the average person to understand small L versus big L. So I do still care about libertarianism as a philosophy. I see the Libertarian Party as the biggest inhibitor of that philosophy succeeding. And that does make me want to explore how I can continue to be involved and, maybe make a push for the party itself or do other things like that.
So do you think, let's, zoom back to whenever the LP was first founded. I can't remember when. Do you think that there would be some mechanism that could be put in place to effectively prevent it from becoming leftist that could potentially be implemented now? Or is it going to require like constant ongoing vigilance?
It's tough because political parties in the United States are like borderline bound to be democracies, but the current entity that I've been working on in New Hampshire, so I've started this club. Technically, it's structured as a club. It's whether it's literally a club in terms of our intent is a more ambiguous question. But I've started a private club called the Free State Party. I'm devising procedures that scale, but currently it's myself and a small handful of men that I trust. We decide if you get into the club. Once you're in the club, we might do polls, we might do surveys, but ultimately none of that stuff is binding, and the people who control the club control the decisions. I think that this is a much better model. I think, libertarianism is an inherently anti-democratic ideology. That doesn't mean we're pro-monarchy. I don't think those are the only two choices. My ideal design is the joint stock corporation, but the Libertarian Party has the outcomes that it has because it's a democracy. The whole thing is structured incorrectly. And so I do think it would make sense to push for more states to become less democratic, to be less controlled, by the sort of pulses and emotions of the demos. And I don't know to what degree the Libertarian Party itself nationally can be changed, but if I were to continue to be involved, that is absolutely something that I would be interested, in doing. Even LPNH, people see me as this LPNH guy, but I don't even want to build much on top of LPNH, because why would I want to build a bunch of things on top of a democracy where anyone can pay $25 and who ultimately controls the thing? It's as simple as you get 50 people who pay $25 and now they're in control, which is, I'm getting tangential here, but this is another example of why the whole thing was so ridiculous. The New Hampshire Libertarian Party was rightfully elected. The people who control the Libertarian Party were the dues-paying members of LPNH. If any of this loser brigade wanted to control LPNH, they literally just had to get 75 people in New Hampshire who would pay $25, and it would have been their affiliate. They couldn't do that because their ideas and their perspectives are that unpopular. And so the notion of they're simultaneously this political party that wants to get votes and is saying our stuff is going to be popular. And then they're saying at the same time we couldn't find 75 people in the state of New Hampshire who agreed with us, because they could have just controlled the state party that way. 75 people who disagree with us in New Hampshire, they don't exist. There's not that many. They could have all showed up and the party would have been theirs.
So, do you think there's anything else about this whole incident that you think my audience in particular should understand?
Look, the thing that was the hardest for me to get, and it's not really about this situation, so it's bigger picture than that, is understanding the heart of leftism, egalitarianism, and how many people hold this perspective in their hearts or in their heads. And Murray Rothbard has egalitarianism as a revolt against nature as an example of this. But this is just how a tremendous amount of people behave and believe. The Jason Arde situation in the UK is another great example of this. And this is just how people's psychology works. Why do so many people hate Elon Musk? Why do so many environmentalists specifically hate Elon Musk, the guy who's done more for green energy than anyone. A lot of humans just have this bitterness towards people who do things, who stand strong. Again, Ayn Rand got it. I think her heroes were unrealistic at times, but she got it. She understood this. And this is just reality. This is just how it works. It's the same thing playing out in the LP. It's why they can't have a direct conversation. It's why they ignore all the evidence of our success. A lot of people will see someone else doing something and they just get in this emotional state where there's no attempt to reason. Reasoning is impossible. It's bitterness and anger. And I do think libertarianism should deeply think about this, because how do we square our ideology with these aspects of human nature? But this is what's driving all this stuff. It's not about Trump. It's about that we stand strong, that we don't take the knee, that we don't all this stuff around race, all this stuff around transgender, all this stuff. It's the same kind of thing driving it. And this is what we don't obey, and that's why they have a problem with us.
Well, thank you very much. I know you've got a jet soon. Thank you for coming on.
Do you want one more? Do you want one more?
No, I actually managed to get through pretty much all my questions. The only other ones were like way earlier on in the relevant stuff over there. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it very much. And yeah, hopefully I wish you all the luck.
Thank you so much. Zal Zulu.
Thank you.
Cheers.
See you. All right. Okay, so not planned, but of course that was had to be cut a little bit short there. So I suppose I could do like a video reaction or something, and we're all here, right? So let's do something with this this space. First, let me believe I did get a super chat in. Yes, from Man Sharma for 1,000 rupees. Thank you very much. It's not that I don't like him. I kind of do like his persona and appreciate his entrepreneurial expertise. I just think his ideas are very bad, especially the race-realistic ones, i.e. The libertarian gene, and his pragmatism stuff on immigration. Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to him in New Hampshire, that was one of the things we were arguing about quite a bit. I can't remember the flow. I mean, I was drinking quite a bit that night, because we were arguing in like basically a bar. It was like a private bar, you know. But yeah, actually pop this up. Pop this out. Title change time. I'm not going to do that. I may do it on Twitch because I don't think they're a fan of that. But I'm not changing it on YouTube because then the title changes for the whole thing. This is the branding of the stream. Yeah, I just want to stick around for a little impromptu video react. What do I got here? There we go. Here's my. It's so dry. Let me do this one. This one's been on the back burner for a little bit now. This is a video by Jack Lloyd, philosopher. It would be Fa then. I always forget how to pronounce that. Where they're saying that my video on grifting was wrong because that example of a Nick Fuentes interview, example of how to deal with grifting. the best way to... I'll put this here. That. Is that good? Let's see here. I was drinking so much content. This is a vicious cycle. My mouth dries out so quickly. I have to drink a bunch of water, and I start feeling it in my chest. I start getting like heartburn and stuff. Pardon me. I don't want to burp too much on stream though. And we got a Diego Amateur for 1000 CLP. Imagine thinking Dave Smith is a good candidate. Yeah, I mean, well, that was like I think what he was referring to there was like that was the promise of the Mises Caucus. And you have to remember, like, you know, back at the start of the Mises Caucus, you know, Dave Smith was a good libertarian still. You know, he kind of went off the rails a little. And then we got another from Manshammer for 100 rupees. Thank you very much. The reason I really care about LPNH, Free State Project, and Kauffman is because I do think New Hampshire is the final destination for me and a lot of my friends. That's where I'm planning to shack up eventually. Yeah, let's watch this video. I don't know if we'll get through the entire thing. I got time. The stream wasn't even supposed to start yet, I suppose. Probably. Bit of work. Whiskey. I'm not doing the interview anymore. I might as well. Fucking bears. All right.
Hey everyone, it's the philosopher and
Jack here.
What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining. So we just want to do a quick video in response to Liquid Zulu made a video about grift. He defines what grifters are or what that concept means, and he gives some examples. I was watching through this video. Basically, I like the first half and how he breaks it down and what calling someone a grifter is saying, like, you know, breaking down the description of that. But then in the second half of the video, that's when the philosophy started taking a turn, and I was like, oh no, it's Liquid Zulu is erring here and I want to correct it. So that's what this video is about, is just like a fun example of how, you know, philosophy matters and it's important to have that philosophical grounding, and human mind is prone to error. So just, you know, anyone can make mistakes. And so I just wanted to call this out, and hopefully, you know, Liquid Zulu, if you're watching this helps you in the future.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be some like hate or dogpiling thing, because we love his work and we love your work, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's not really about that. It's really,
Well, thank you.
it's not like he's not philosophical normally and all this other stuff. It's more so just that in this context where, you know, he's trying to make this presentation about, you know, Nick Fuentes. He, I think, slips up and makes it seem as if Nick is actually making a reasonable argument that stays on track, you know,
Right.
and
Let me just remind myself. Bring it in. Script. here's the scripted doodle doo. So yeah, Nick Fuentes was in my defense against the dark arts sort of section. So really what I'm doing here is showing like, okay, here is Nick Fuentes dealing with Piers Morgan's grifting. Here's how he responds to it, and what I like about his responses to it. See all the quotes and more. Pardon me.
Emphasizes his point in a strong way, and it's actually, oddly enough, Piers Morgan who's the one who's actually making the stronger argument and bringing reason and evidence and staying focused. And so we're going to just break down the sophistry that Nick employs and show people both how he employs, that in this context of what he says, and also later on another different clip outside his, documentary, this Liquid Zulu's documentary. Just
Hello there, Floppa. How's it going?
emphasizing the nature of what Nick operates on, which is himself, lies and manipulations and things like that. He's not a good guy whatsoever. He's very open about him being a liar and manipulator. So he did that in this video, actually. So that's why we just want to make it clear that it actually was not a strong presentation there.
Yeah, it wasn't a good example.
No.
In this case, Piers Morgan wasn't grifting. He was actually presenting his case very rationally and compared to Nick, actually philosophically. So
yeah. As Piers Morgan, of course, he flip-flops and all that good stuff. Yes, he's definitely grifted in the past and this kind of thing. It's just in this specific instance, as we'll show, he's actually being very logical and reasonable to what his premises are. So we'll play the clip here from Liquid Zulu's video here, and then we'll pause in between and kind of break things down, just kind of walking you through step by step.
Yeah, I just like that he calls it defense against the dark arts, and oddly, it's that the dark arts being employed is by Nick.
Yeah, basically the dark
we were
arts.
Like,
is
oh man,
sophistry.
this is too big of an error to just let it go because it's like half the video. So,
yeah, it was a little too big, so we just want to break it down. And some people in the comments too actually caught it too. A few people did catch it, but it's a big thing, so we'll point it out.
Nick Fuentes serves as an excellent case study for how to deal with such attacks, even though he shares vanishingly few positions with us libertarians. He highlights his skills perhaps at their peak in his interview on Piers Morgan's show. Morgan, who will flip on any position the instant the tide of public opinion turns, can surely be considered among the most prominent and successful political...
I will say I should have had a sound effect there as I was flipping through the examples. I had more examples and done like a... what are those things? Like the film projector things where it's like a bunch of cartridges, like a little... I should have had a sound effect there. What can I do about that? That's an editing problem there. A little improvement I could have made there.
grifters of all time. He's aware of all the tricks of the trade to be used when defending against a radical. So let's see how Fuentes is able to successfully overcome such chaff. Morgan begins his salvo with a section he has titled Fuentes on how his background has shaped him, where he is swiftly called out by Fuentes on what exactly he is doing.
I always believe everybody's a product of their environment. I've interviewed thousands of people. I mean, maybe 3, 4, 5,000 people from all.
Is that how my fucking audio was edited like in that video? Got a delay to it.
The grifter is a strange breed. Completely diffuses the effect.
It must just be how they've like ripped the video or something. I don't know. Oh, it's probably they're playing it in their studio, and then it's going through their microphone like a microsecond later. Griffin won for $2 US. Thank you very much. How's it going? Can we get a puppy reveal? Yeah. Go picture my puppies. My puppies. Picture of a sandwich I made the other day. Let me... What's the best way to do? I'll send it to myself. Doxing. Yeah, I know you can't see shit. That's why I'm figuring out a different way to do it. That's what my puppy looks like. One of them at least. Got this little guy over here.
Different walks of life. But the one common theme is a product
Is titled Fuentes on how his background has shaped him, where he is swiftly called out by Fuentes on what exactly he is doing.
I always believe everybody's a product of their environment. I've interviewed thousands of people. I mean, maybe 3, 4, 5,000 people from all different walks of life. But the one common theme I would say is everyone's a product of their environment. And I was reading some stuff about you in the last few days. There was an episode of your podcast where you talked about your father, Bill Fuentes, and how you wouldn't take the family, including you, to certain restaurants because he believed they were.
Yeah, I mean, like, this whole, you're a product of your environment type of narrative he's trying to, like, build up here. Ugh, shut up. Al Papi, thank you very much.
Associated with African Americans. We would be deciding where to go to eat and sit. What are we going to do for dinner tonight? It was a running joke. Me and my sister would say Applebee's, and my dad would say we would never eat at Applebee's. Not in a million years should you be caught dead, Fuentes said about Applebee's. Go to a different restaurant, a local restaurant. No Applebee's, no Red Lobster. That is commonly known as black fare.
All right, so we just want to, unpack the first couple of statements and arguments. So Piers Morgan, of course, says a statement that you're a product of your environment. That's a claim. That's an assertion. And then from there, he is developing this idea that Nick Fuentes said something about his own personal life. So he's actually bringing evidence, right? When you're talking about what someone says, you want to have evidence. So Piers says, here's your own words on your own show to Nick, right? That's evidence. And in this statement, he's talking about, as Nick is talking about his upbringing and how his father would say, basically, there's certain restaurants, Applebee's, Red Lobster,
that you don't want to be caught dead at.
You don't want to be caught dead at.
Because it's considered black fare.
Right. So in other words, it's a shaming label because it's black fare. And in this case, what does that mean? It means, okay, lots of black people like to eat at these restaurants, right? So this is a very specific and narrow claim. This isn't like an abstraction. This is a very specific claim about, okay, this is part of your upbringing. This is evidence from your own self-reported. Here's my upbringing is like. Direct quote. So. And here is the cause-effect relationship saying, oh, okay, your father would be like, I don't want you going here where people of a certain ethnicity or race are, right? That's pretty clear, right? Now you can sit there and debate that based on reason and evidence, but that is actually a very claim, reasoning about that and evidence put together, right? Rift or not, in terms of his past, that is for Piers Morgan, he does actually have a complete argument. So the question then, of course, is going to be,
yeah, but it's like, what is the motivation behind asking that? I don't think Piers Morgan is motivated by just like, oh, well, I have this theory that nurture means more than nature, and I'm trying to like elaborate upon this thesis here. So I want to bring in a bunch of different people and ask them about their nature versus their, like, I don't think that's actually what's going on here. I think Piers Morgan, this was my impression when I watched the initial video he did with Nick Fuentes. I think his motivation, it's like a politically motivated attack on him, be like, oh, well, you're a racist. You came from a long line of racists. Your great-grandchildren are going to be racist. It's like a kind of blood libel claim against Nick Fuentes. That's my read on what Piers Morgan was trying to accomplish there. And I think it is worthwhile questioning, well, what is somebody trying to accomplish by their question? Are they just genuinely curious? Not necessarily, not necessarily. We got another from Griffin1 for $5 US. Thank you very much. I love him. I see I missed a lot of stream already. Oops. Hope everything's going well, and thank you for recommending People Golf Lecture Series. And yeah, so Kauffman had to move the stream up an hour. So normally I would have started streaming out now, actually. So yeah, if you missed the Kauffman interview, that was back before he had tight constraints today, unfortunately. Yeah, no, I think it was a decent interview there. I think I got through what I wanted to get through. I do want to clarify, even for Kauffman's sake, like, I didn't envision it at all as this is a time for me to debate Kauffman. Sure, push back when I think he's wrong on something, and push back when I think there's a decent follow-up to be had, where it's like, actually, I don't agree with what you're saying here. Sure, that's fine. But the main point of the interview was to interview him about the disaffiliation. It wasn't to debate him about pragmatism. It wasn't to do any of these other things. And that's why, like I was trying earlier, where some people were sending me disputes they've had with LPNH. I was like, okay, well, is this you specifically saying, this is why I think LPNH should be disaffiliated because of reasons X, Y, Z? Great, I'll fucking include that. If anybody had said that to me, then I would have included it, absolutely. But it seems a lot of the, pushback against LPNH from my side, at least, it's not people who are specifically calling for disaffiliation. They just have other issues with LPNH, but they're not saying that, therefore we want disaffiliation. That seems to be a different sort of viewpoint. Probably Alistair Gay believes that. I would not be surprised if I've seen a bunch of people in my fucking mentions talking about goddamn Alistair Gay and how, I'm a Nazi now. Whatever, don't care. And how that's a big problem. That's because I fucking didn't want IP law to be enforced. How dare I? How fucking dare I not want IP law to be enforced? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, then we got a Kisu Kalat for €10, saying Zulu completely debunks pragmatists with a picture of a puppy. Indeed. This puppy doesn't believe that the true is what works. Actually, maybe the true is whatever gives him a sausage. Primacy of sausage.
Okay, well, how does Nick respond to that, right? So is Nick going to say, that's what he said, or that's not what he said, those kinds of things? Let's take a look and see what goes on.
And you also shared another story about your family and restaurants. It said, before me and my sister were born, my family had a saying about Olive Garden that contains the N-word that we're not allowed to say. So my question, based on that anecdote that you say on your own podcast, is do you think you grew up in a racist environment, that your father was inherently racist, and that thought process moved to you?
Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents based on anecdotes.
Whoa, am I still fucking streaming? Am I still streaming? YouTube's saying fine. I just looked over at the restream tab and it was asking me to re-log in again. Very strange.
I would say that's
it's your anecdote.
Okay, so right away, does Nick respond to the specifics, saying this is true or this is false, or did this influence you or not? What did he say? He diverted, right? He moved
Which means
the direction.
he did say those words, and the quote is accurate. It is
the quote is real. He actually said it. It involved a racial epithet, right? And again, this isn't something where it's like whatever you listen to rap music. He's actually talking about his upbringing and associating it with specific actions about behaviors, like, hey, my dad said not to go here. That is something that is formative, right? You're saying you're a little kid and your dad is setting up the
audio is kind of weird. You meaning on like the video? But we already that's fine. We've already went over that. It's because it's echoing through their mic.
these, ideas.
It's like this is the point I was trying to make in the video. That there are some types of people where if you try to honestly engage with them, they're just going to, in effect, use that against you. That it's, you're not doing debate any longer. You're doing poetry. In poetry, the rules are different than in debate. You can do poetry in the middle of debate. You can do debate in the middle of poetry. Now, you need to be very careful that if your opponent is doing poetry against you, then you're not just taking what they're saying at face value and accepting that they're being honest with you. You got to also do a little bit of poetry. And that's why it's defense against the dark arts. These are magical words being spewed back and forth. And you need to be speaking the same language. It's almost like you just, if you, there are other examples of this that I've got. If you try to engage it as if it is still a debate, then it's almost like you're not realizing what's going on here. Right? You're just speaking a different language than what everybody else is speaking. You got an odd Nova for $5 US. Thank you very much. Is your face cam a square because you are a pragmatic trianglist subverting grifter? I don't know, can I make my face cam a triangle? I don't know if that's available. I suppose I could probably mask it or something.
In your mind about, that's undesirable, that's shameful. That's his real lived experience, right? So that's not something that is just, made up. And how could you possibly say that when Nick's the one who said it?
Yeah, it's very sophisticated of Nick here to change Piers Morgan literally directly quoting his show twice and saying, oh, this is a new low for you. So here he is, Nick, engaging in ad hominem attack against Piers, just saying, oh, this is a new low for you. And his attempt here is to manipulate the audience, which...
Is that an ad hominem? Like, he's not saying you're wrong because you're stupid or you're gay or you're blah, 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 this or the other thing. He is attacking Piers. He's definitely attacking Piers. But he's not even saying that he's wrong that those are the quotes. Right? At least not at this stage. I believe he does go on to say, no, my father's not a... Here's why you're wrong about that. Blah, blah, blah. Attacking somebody isn't necessarily an ad hominem. I mean, that was the effect of what Piers was trying to do. He was trying to just go, look, Nick Fuentes, he's a racist and nobody should take him seriously. That's like the effect of what Piers was trying to get done.
He successfully did when it comes to Liquid Zulu. I mean, if you can see from Zulu's narration here, he's basically saying Nick is responding philosophically when he's not. He's actually being very fallacious and sophisticated by attacking.
Did I say that? I'm saying he does not proceed with the discussion until he's pointing to the elephant in the room. So I'm not saying that this is a substantial philosophical response. I'm saying that he's not moving along with that until he's pointing to the elephant in the room. He's not moving. He's not just getting into the point of what he's trying to say until he's pointed out the manipulation tactics. So I think I'm actually saying the opposite of what they're saying here. In seriousness, you should put a subtle watermark on the face cam for clip conversion. I mean, maybe. Make people, know generally who I am. I don't know, what do you guys think? Should I put a watermark, like a little Liquid Zulu thing on here? I mean, a bunch of really successful streamers don't do that, so I don't think I've seen that before. I don't know. I'll think about it. I will think about it. Not a bad idea on its face. I don't know, it might just piss people off, though.
Piers and saying, this is a new low for you, and you're attacking my father. And now he's saying that he's attacking when he's not. He's positing a question. He said, these are your words. Do you think that...
Right, but here's the point. Is that a question isn't always just a question. Right? I can use a question as an attack against someone. That is entirely possible. I can use a question to manipulate. I can use a question to poison the well. I can use questions to do all these sorts of things. And the question is, if you're getting that sort of question, you might disagree whether or not that's the case with Nick versus Piers here. But really the fundamental point of what I'm saying is that if you are getting that type of question, you have to point out the manipulation before you just allow it to proceed, right? Or else that manipulation hangs in the background the entire time.
That your childhood had an effect on you and your father had an influence on you when it comes to your views and being racist. Right. And it's something there where it's like, it's not something that Pierce is claiming it as a generality, like, oh, every single person in your family is racist. He's saying, did this have an impression on you? Are these racist tonalities something that...
Is that the philosopher and her husband? Yeah, this is the philosopher and Jack Lloyd. Had him on the show before, definitely. Don't think I've spoken to her, though.
may have influenced you, right? And so Nick can't handle that up front, right? Because he doesn't want, for him going on Piers, he's on a more normie show. So he's trying to first play it off as if, he can appeal to a more mainstream audience, even though Piers is a little bit alt still, but he's trying to basically water down the message of what he really thinks so that he can deceive people into actually maybe listening to him or being his defenders, right? Because if you can loop someone in through gaslighting that way, right? And then you get them to buy into your gaslighting, you just create a whole bunch of people say, oh, that's not what he really meant or said, even though he's literally saying it. And everybody's on the inside.
Right, but let's say that is the case. Let's say Nick is doing gaslighting, he's doing all these things. Like, would the correct response for Piers then to just respond to the gaslighting as if it's honest, or to call out the gaslighting first and then to proceed? Right, I think it would be the latter. I think if you're, socially intelligent enough to pick up on these manipulations in the moment, which I'm not necessarily intelligent enough to do that, you should then call out the manipulative tactic being used. You say, hey, here's the exact manipulation you're using on, and name it for the audience, right? I think that's sensible.
Knows that, of course, all these Groper people, they know that he means that. But for casual listeners, where it's like they're maybe not like, oh, I'm going to listen to him every day, they're starting to get a different impression of him in their mind, right? He's seeding in their mind, oh, he's not that bad. This Piers, he's just trying to make it out to be something bad. So that's what he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to accomplish people who are not intimately familiar, who lack the critical thinking skills, that he's actually not bad, and trying to turn the tables and shame Piers Morgan, even though Piers Morgan presented actually a coherent argument that was based on his acclaim, his reasoning, thinking through what Nick said, and Nick said being the actual evidence. So it's kind of hard to beat there because he's not speculating about what Nick thinks in his head. He's quoting him directly.
Yeah. So you can either respond to the claims and say, hey, you quoted me, but that quote is actually wrong. Here's the actual quote of what I said.
Right, or a full quote or something else.
Right, if you don't, then the quote is real, is accurate, then you can just explain what you meant there. But to then say, oh, Piers Morgan is just attacking me is not an argument. Because Piers is making an argument. He's directly quoting you. He's making a hypothesis, and he's giving his reasoning, and in fact asking you to clarify. So. And if you want to say, oh, it's an attack because it's a negative assertion about yourself, it's not something that is not directly addressed in the substance, right? It's not like, oh, you're a evil NAZI because you want to have capitalism, right? It's not some abstract thing that's being inappropriately applied. Like the actual language used is actually dealing with racial issues. It's not something where you're misappropriating a label. It's actually directly pertinent to the.
Well, let's take this on like a really simple level then. Really brute, like dumbass type of manipulation. Like if I said, oh, you're a capitalist, so when did you start beating children? Right, that's a loaded question. It's got a premise in there that you have indeed started beating children at some point, or oh, so when did you stop beating children? That type of thing. You should call out that manipulative tactic rather than just accepting it as an honest question, right? You don't just say, well, I don't beat you, and then move on. Say, hey, this is a manipulation you're doing here. I'm not continuing until I point out this manipulation you're doing. Then I can respond to the manipulation. That's what I'm trying to get out there.
Statement. And that's why he squirms. Yep. So let's keep listening and breaking down a little more.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are.
And my parents aren't.
You told the story.
And I will. And I'm not trying to ambush you.
The specific technique Nick is employing here is that he does not simply proceed with the discussion until he has pointed to the elephant in the room.
No,
yeah, this ain't no philosophical
technique. That's not it at all, actually.
Zulu's right. He's employing a technique. But
Well, it's not a philosophical technique. It's a debate technique. I'm talking about defense against the dark arts, right? If you're facing these dark arts in debate, here are some methods you can use to defend yourself. I'm not saying I'm not saying if you're a philosopher, this is some philosophy you can do. I'm saying if you're in a debate and somebody's using this against you, here's how you can maintain logos rather than, pathos without ceding it to the enemy. Because pathos is important if you're talking about debate strategy. You need the pathos if you're going to really sway people. So here are some methods you can use to maintain pathos. Griffin 1 for $5 US. Thank you very much. Questions like, have you stopped hurting your loved one? Are not actually trying to find truth. Yeah.
It isn't philosophical. It's precisely sophistic.
Right. And in fact, here we have, and there's a sophistry right here, right? Nick says, oh, he's not here to defend himself. Yeah, well.
Also, isn't this stream about Kauffman? Where is he? I joined a bit late. So yeah, Kauffman was the first part. He was on a tight time crunch there. We got him in and out within 45 minutes. And now we're just kind of filling time because, I mean, we got everyone here, so I might as well, do something. Pardon me.
Neither was his father when he made a quote about him, claiming that his dad was joking with him in this, racially charged way.
It's just a deflection.
It's a complete deflection. It has nothing to do with whether he's here to defend himself. Nick's the one who told the story, and he's addressing Nick's words, not, oh, my father said this as a, third-hand hearsay. It's actually Nick is the person who said the statement. He's in the room, proverbially with Piers Morgan.
Exactly.
So,
it's funny how Nick tries to frame it like, oh, I'm the victim. You're suddenly attacking my father, and you're putting him on trial when.
Let me put text to that effect on the screen. Over. Go back. Kauffman video is over. Go back and vote. I'll change on dashboard, not twitch.tv. Even though, like, goddamn nobody watches me on Twitch. By the way, if you got Twitch Prime, if you got Amazon Prime, head on over to twitch.tv/LiquidZulu, and you can give me free money. So, hard to say no to that. Stream Manager. And it's stream info. Here we go. Responding to Jack Lloyd and the Philosopher video on me. Done. Presumably that's updated now. Zulu, whose dog is that? That's my puppy. Good him. My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Niagara Royal Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
That's totally made up. That's not what's going on here. It's an interview between adults, and he's quoting your show. You're a public figure. He's asking you to address your public words. So
right, the person who said it is literally being addressed.
Your father isn't being put on trial. So it's just insane to act like that. And people who don't know how to critically think will just be like, oh, see, he looks like the victim. He feels like.
Can I give you free money without either of those, or do I have to pay for that money? So if you are good at forgeries, then I suppose you could forge some money for me. And I'm not sure if I could accept that. I think there's probably some sort of fraud involved if I were to try and spend that with somebody. Otherwise, anybody have a spare genie wish, then feel free to spend that on me. It won't cost you any money, certainly, unless it's a strange type of genie. Then in your first wish, just ask for a bunch of money, and you can give that to me, I suppose. Yeah.
Like the victim, I'll be on his side. And if they have a preconceived bias against Pierce, which Zulu does here because he sees Pierce as only a grifter, in his mind, he's going to default to just thinking Pierce.
It is worthwhile to note why that is. Like, people need to realize if you're in, like, America, Piers Morgan has been grifting for decades in the UK. Decades upon decades upon decades. Everybody in the UK knows him as a slime ball, as a liar, as a cheat, as like a weasel. People in the UK know this about him. In the US, it's like he kind of went over, rebranded himself as like a free speech guy. No. No. What's your video you're reacting to about? I'm not in know. So this is Jack and Pho made a video saying that I got Nick Fuentes wrong. They're responding to my video on grifting, most recent video, one I did with Tax Brass, and so I'm responding to them, responding to me. Rewatching the interview right now. Why is Kauffman red? I think he's got a skin condition.
Pierce is bad and, you know, wrong here, instead of actually listening to the words and the assertions being made. And yeah, someone can be a grifter in the past or still be a grifter now, but make a point in one scenario that's actually not sophistic. So this is one of those cases with Pierce.
Right, and basically what it boils down to is that Nick Fuentes is just using moral indignation, offense, and diversion in order to move the talking goalpost past the point of the original claim, because he can't win on the claim, because Pierce actually just made a really solid claim. You know what I mean? That's
a
hard for him to
sophistic
think.
to get someone emotionally confused.
That's the thing. I don't even think. I mean, let me check. I think Nick does respond to the claim. Is the thing. Like, I think later on, he does respond to the claim. Correct me if I'm wrong if you've watched the Piers Morgan interview. But I think he's doing what I'm describing. He first stops the conversation, says, okay, here's the manipulation you're doing. And then after he's done that, then he starts responding to the claim. I believe that's how it went. Lines up with the strategy I'm describing, you know. It's not never respond to claims. It's first point out if somebody's being manipulating, point out the manipulation, then you can respond to the claim. Send you a message on Ko-fi. Let's see. I'll give you invite afterwards and respond to that. Thank you very much.
Used instead of providing an actual counter argument.
What would you do if you got the superpowers of Superman? Would you attack states and other NEP violators? Yeah, I would try to stand up for people's rights, certainly. I know that, Ben Shapiro didn't like that new Superman movie because he stood up against the like, Israel stand in country. Ben Shapiro was like, this fucking movie. Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, if somebody's violating the non-aggression principle, I don't see a problem with that.
And responding directly to a claim and the evidence presented.
Morgan is attempting to manipulate the audience to see Nick and his entire family as horrible racists, without the man he's led.
So manipulate the audience would work if the underlying statements weren't themselves actually racist.
Yeah,
well, by saying a manipulation wouldn't work unless the manipulation was correct. Like, that's not how manipulation works. Right? Manipulation can work regardless of if the underlying accusation is correct. That's why it's a manipulation, right?
You can't manipulate about something where it's actually the case of the words.
Well,
right?
and the miss here is the one who's actually emotionally manipulating the audience is not Pierce. In this scenario, it's Nick.
Right. Yeah, Pierce is actually focused specifically and keeps coming back to that. Hey, but this is what you said. Break it down. Where are we missing the gaps about the cause and effect relationships here, about how this influenced you as a kid in terms of having this?
I remember Pierce was on CNN finding loons to destroy easily to push gun control after Sandy Hook. A complete piece of shit. The UK can have a Magwell. You know, maybe for a settlement amount of, like, I don't know, millions and millions and millions of pounds. We might begrudgingly take on that burden again.
Presented to you as, oh, there's a normal way of thinking. Yeah.
Exactly.
Levying the accusation against, even being present to defend himself. Being on the defensive against such an attack is never a good look. If Nick was overly offended and started ranting and raving about how mean Piers is being, this would make the accusation appear as if it has merit, even if it may be just...
Yeah. That's precisely what he did. He literally started ranting and raving and saying how...
No, he's very specifically and precisely calling out the nature of the manipulation. Like, this is the problem with, you know, if you watch the initial interview, the actual original interview, you can see that that's what he's doing. He's not just saying, well, you're being a meanie. Like, he doesn't just say that.
Pierce is being mean, how he's attacking his father.
Call him a whole family racist. Yes,
So
that was literally
this is
the
why we had to call it out, because it's like,
it was confusing, yeah.
Zulu is normally very philosophical,
Right.
but here he really erred, and in my opinion, it's because he has a bias towards Pierce and doesn't know enough about Nick, and so therefore he's, you know, been successfully duped by Nick into demonizing Pierce in this situation, and missing the point that the one who's deflecting and emotionally manipulating the audience, or attempting to, is Nick.
Yeah, I think if Liquid Zulu did his usual, like, I'm going to put this on a computer screen, and like how he does and types out the arguments, like, here, let me make a claim, here, is there a causal relationship, like the cause statement. If he actually broke it down, you know what I mean, with Pierce and then versus what Nick said, I think it'd be a lot more obvious.
Yeah, I think
but I guess because the emotional charge and like the goal, I think, of Liquid Zulu here, he was trying to use Nick to make a broader point about how to like effectively defend yourself against, you know, people.
Well, yeah, and that's the point. It doesn't even matter if what Nick Fuentes or Pierce are saying are true or false. It doesn't really matter. I'm just making the point about the pathos, how you respond to this type of thing.
Who want to demonize you. That was the broader point, but it didn't really work as a good case example here. It actually
Yeah,
it just has to be the opposite, but you know, we'll see.
Liable to get offended when someone is twisting your words to attack your family. Instead of that, Nick effectively stops the conversation to point out exactly what is occurring. He is not simply proceeding with the debate and winning on the flow, because he has recognized that when his opponent is engaging in such manipulations, the flow itself has to be suspended to call out the manipulation. When someone is being dishonest, like Pierce here, the literal semantic meaning of their words is effectively irrelevant.
So for something to be dishonest, right, it would have to lack truth. So where did Pierce become dishonest when he's...
Again, not necessarily. Not necessarily the case. You can be dishonest and still be telling the truth. Like, has anybody seen Snopes fact checks before? Right? They are saying the truthful things, but they're also being dishonest. You can be dishonest without lying. Right? I think that's an important distinction to make.
taking reasoned evidence. Here's something that, you know, you said. It literally follows logically that, oh, this could have been influence on your life. It's certainly when he says, oh, the N-word, I can't say it, and oh, you know, black there, you know, we're not going there. Those are all very realistic
Like, I mean, even if I was like poison the well with somebody, if I was to get in a debate with somebody, it's like, you know, recount their life. It's like, oh, and you used to be a heroin addict, and you've done all these previous manipulations, and you've lied to a bunch of people before, and you stole, and you murdered, and you raped, and blah, 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 blah. So here's my question for you. You know, if I just preloaded it with all that shit, like, I am being dishonest there. I'm not lying necessarily. I could, like, let's imagine I did that with Leibowitz, who does have a very sordid past. Let's say I were to debate Leibowitz on the non-aggression principle. I said, you're a criminal, you're an aggressor, you're this, you're that, and your other thing. You know, I started recounting the exact charges that he was accused of there. And it's like, and then you beat her, and then you, like, you know, you went in there with a knife, and blah, 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 blah. So here's my question about the NEP. That would be very dishonest of me to do that. Like, that would be me just trying to, like, make out that this guy's like some horrid criminal that nobody should take seriously. But that's very dishonest. It's context dropping is what it is.
understandable ways to contextualize someone, be like, I don't want to be around people of a certain ethnicity. Where's the dishonesty? Pierce is not saying, I'm claiming you said something that you didn't. Mm-hmm. He's not saying, oh, your dad said something that he didn't. He's not fabricating anything. He's asking rationally, hey, you said this in your show. Here's a logical connection. Explain yourself. Do you not think that this could have had an effect on you in your childhood in terms of wanting to, you know, basically dive in and push in and kneel in into racially charged statements for attention? So, yeah, it's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
They're using their words as a form of poetry to create some effect in the minds of the audience.
There you go, there's that poetry thing.
That is all that matters. And by Nick simply pausing to call out the nature of the attacks before he moves on to actually defend his father from it, completely diffuses the effect that people...
Like, I suppose the difficulty of a video like this is that I can't show you all of the examples. Like, I can't show you the entire interview. Like, really drill in what I'm meaning when I'm saying that he's just using his words as poetry. It becomes a lot more clear if you do watch all of that context, that he is just doing poetry here. He's not genuinely asking. But, you know, that's a limitation of the format. Zulu, recreate the Alex Jones Juju meme with call me when. I mean, not Sneeko, so I'm not pathetic enough to do that, I don't think.
Pierce wishes to have. At this point, Morgan has two options. He can either move on with the interview, satisfied with Nick's defense.
Actually, here's an idea. Oops, that's the wrong one. Call call me. Kaffer. There we go. There's my Sneeko impression.
Head to his family, or he can try to regain control of the argument and complete this picture he's trying to paint. Of course, he chose to begin with this line of attack specifically because he wants to successfully taint the Fuentes bloodline in the mind of the viewer, such that they will dismiss anything he has to say from that point on.
Oh, wrong.
Well, yeah, that would be the point of saying, yes, I believe that your actions and your words here show a racial bias, but that's not something that's unsubstantiated. And I don't even, and you'll see later, I mean, with other stuff, but it's not even something that Nick Fuentes is himself disagreeing with. Fundamentally, he doesn't have this idea of like, oh no, I actually don't believe that, or no, that was just misconstrued, or I don't think that at all. It's actually his real deal. Like, he actually does believe those things, and he's doing everything he can to try to soften that so that he can be more palatable on a mainstream show and get more people to sympathize with him and become his defenders, right? Because that's the goal, right? It's two ways. You know, Pierce is trying to be nice, and he's trying to get empathy and sympathy.
Yeah, he succeeded with Zulu here because Zulu just said that Pierce could just move on and stop attacking Nick and his family, and there you go. He's wrong. He wasn't attacking Nick and his family. He brought up actual.
Okay, let's bring up my exact words. I want to be accurate here. Morgan has two options. He can either move on with the interview, satisfied with the defense of the family. I mean, yeah, there's also like stuff cut out in the middle there. Or he can try and regain control of the argument and complete the picture he's trying to paint. Yes, that's the argument I'm trying to make. He's trying to paint this picture right off the bat. You know, he's a racist. He comes from a long line of racists, and blah blah blah, so that people won't pay attention to what he has to say, which I think is dishonest.
Words that he said and tied it back to the other things that he says, which are racially charged, which are, you know, stereotypical and racist. So that's really more the point. And so if Pierce were to come back, the most philosophical thing he would do and is going to do is bring it back to the evidence that he brought up in the first place. There's nothing Pierce is doing wrong. He's not attacking him. So Pierce, you can see, is getting frustrated because the one being attacked in this case is Pierce. Nick is the one trying to attack Pierce and paint him out to be a bad person who just attacks families who aren't on the show, when that's not what's going on in reality. So Pierce tries to bring it back to reality.
Yeah, I'll show that here.
So he picks the latter option.
I guess my point about the environment, I'm not saying you are a product of your environment. I'm saying
Right. I'm not saying you are a product of your environment. Then why do you bring it up?
Now that's the first part where Piers Morgan has flip-flopped. So if you want to point out for flip-flopping, there it is.
Yeah.
Piers Morgan.
There you go. See, that's the point, is that he's doing this liar, manipulation, slimy type of shit. It's like, no, I'm not saying that you are a product of your environment. I'm just saying most people are a product of their environment. Like, that's the type of manipulation I'm talking about. He's poisoning the well. He's trying to just, like, paint this picture, dance around the things that he really wants to say, dance around some topic that he didn't want to explicitly state, that you are predetermined to be a racist because your father was a racist. He just dances around and paints that picture in the viewer's mind, right? That's what the poetry is doing. No, I'm not saying directly. I'm not saying that you are a product of your environment. That's the point that I'm making here. That's why I'm calling it a manipulation. We've got a Penelope Teak for 20 Canadian dollars. Thank you very much. Money for the puppy. I saw someone lamenting modern architecture in homes. I found most of them to be beautiful. Now, I don't know that much about objectivist aesthetics, but can you say roughly how to evaluate them? So I'm not an expert on architecture in particular, as far as it pertains to the aesthetics. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with modern architecture necessarily. If you read the Fountainhead, it can give you somewhat of an idea of what's going on there. Like, it should be true to its form, true to the materials, true to that type of stuff, right? And lift up the individual with it.
He did just hold out there. He started with a claim of, oh, I believe everybody's a product of the environment, and then goes, I'm not saying you're part of your environment. Okay, that's contradiction there. There you go. You want a flip-flop? It's not a grift, it's just a flip-flop.
So that was
There's your flip-flop.
Right.
That's a flip-flop.
That specific sentence.
That specific sentence is a flip-flop.
Right.
But he is doing it in his rhetoric, his version of sophistry, you could say, because he's trying to soften it again to try to get Nick to come back to the original question.
most people are in some capacity. When I read that anecdote, just to remind you, it's not something I have put out there. You told this story, right? And you said that
you said this. We're looping. You said this.
No, you haven't really directly.
Literally not a loop. What a distraction.
Yeah. Right.
He feels uncomfortable with the fact that Pierce is bringing it back again to evidence.
Surely it is literally a loop. I read that anecdote. You told that. Blah, blah. Like, that was what he started with, right? And also, I think that I did cut out some stuff in the debate. Not the debate, the interview was supposed to be.
Saying, hey, you're treating me like you're trying to say I'm attacking your family as if I made this up out of nowhere. No, I'm literally quoting you. So it's not an attack to say, hey, you said this. Here's a direct quote from your show. What did you mean by that? Does it mean this? Does it tell me that this had an influence on your life? Am I correct here in my hypothesis that this affected you and that you're partially a product of your childhood? Like, this is all wrapped up in his line of thinking of hypotheses and bringing it back to the evidence that he actually presented. And then for Nick to just cut him off and say, oh, see, we're looping. He puts his hands up, does this crazy, insane gesture. And again, that's a form of manipulation. To the untrained eye, to the not philosophical eye, you will just be like, oh, see, the one who looks like they're right is the one who's doing this. And the one who's being called stupid must be the one that's wrong.
And to be clear, he wasn't doing this. He was saying we're looping, as in, like, loop. He wasn't saying, you're fucking loco, man. What, are you on your period there, Pierce? Like, I don't think he was doing that.
See, philosophy is hard. You got to actually understand and break things down. What argument is being made? What is the evidence being presented? And who, in this case, is not actually providing a counter argument and is deflecting and trying to change the topic, trying to make it about personal attacks. See, Pierce is crazy. You're looping, trying to distract the audience and say, okay, don't pay attention.
See.
His version of sophistry, you could say, because he's trying to soften it.
I have put out there. You told this story, right? And you said that
you said this. We're looping. You said this.
He's saying we're looping. He's not saying, he's not doing that. That's a different thing.
To the not philosophical eye, you will just be as hard. You got to acting and trying to don't pay attention to the fact that Pierce called out twice that these are literally quotes from my show, from Nick's show. Don't focus on that. Instead, just think in your mind that Pierce is just crazy. So don't listen to anything he says. That's sophistry.
Right. It'd be just as ridiculous if Nick said on the show, when I was a young person, there was someone who went missing in my town and my dad was out, late one night and he came back and it was kind of weird. And I don't know, like low key, I think maybe he killed somebody. Right. And then Pierce would go, okay, so on your show, you said you think your dad may have killed somebody. So what happened with that? It's like, oh, you're just claiming my dad's a murderer. It'd be that kind of insane. He's the one who brought up. I speculated, that he thinks things about his own family. He's the one sharing his own details and saying these things. And then Pierce is just.
Why are you calling a puppy? My puppy. He's on call with me right now.
Bring up evidence. So you said this in your show. This has this clear meaning based on what you're saying. What's going on?
Right.
And Nick can't handle that because he knows it's true. Yeah. Because he knows that deep down, he can't deny the fact that it's real. It's out there in the public. Anyone can go fact check that and go look up his own words and listen to it for themselves. Because it's concrete, he has to distract. Because if he admits it, then it's over. It's game over. Because anyone who listens to that statement and goes, "Oh, he really did say that," and that's what he meant in context, is going to think that. Like, okay. So,
and I would say this example, this snippet here, is an example of how to counter a sophist, a grifter, someone who pretends that they didn't say something that they said before. But where Zulu is wrong is the person who's defending against that sophistry is not Nick. In this case, it's actually Pierce. Pierce is the one who shows you how to respond to sophistry. He's the one saying, hang on, you're trying to attack me, but actually I'm directly quoting you. So he's bringing it back to the evidence. That is a good
Right, but again, that can also still be an attack. Part of an attack. That's the point I'm trying to get across here. Like, you can be saying truthful things, not say one lie, and still be dishonest and still manipulate. That's all possible.
Tactic. When you find that somebody is not responding to your argument, they refuse to engage and give you an actual counter argument. Maybe they start attacking you and saying that you're insane.
Yeah, no, this is my my shock collar attachment for the dog. Yeah, that blue collar there. Every time I do this, you're gonna hear a yelp. Big. See, did you guys hear that one? Because 5,000 volts directly the brainstem every time I do that. That's how I get them to sit exactly in one particular spot for 12 hours a day.
Or whatever name calling, you can point that out. You can point out you're calling me names and you're not addressing my initial argument. Bring it back to your initial argument. My initial argument was this. This is the evidence I presented. And that actually is one of the ways that you deal with sophists. You bring it back to the reason and evidence and the original argument. because what sophists like to do is they try to emotionally manipulate you and get you distracted and confused and not talking about the original evidence that you brought up.
Yeah, and it's very easy to get sidetracked with sophists, and that's why a big part of it is just, staying focused, because otherwise you'll just get lost in every red herring rabbit trail imaginable.
Yep.
I think responded to it, which is whether your father would not take you to certain restaurant chains because he associated them with black Americans. Is that true?
No, well, see here, if you're in America, you would say that Olive Garden is not real Italian food. My dad was just a food snob, but no, it's got nothing to do with that.
Okay, so he just lied straight up because he literally
he was about to say no, but then he stopped himself because I bet you in his head was like, shoot, that would be too much of a lie.
Yeah.
So let me just say, no, okay, he did say it.
Right.
But he didn't mean any.
It was more like, because the question was, your father would refuse to take you to black restaurants. And like, so he's trying to like, figure out like, okay, well, no, that's not really quite how it is. He's just a food snob. If you're in America, you'd understand that Olive Garden isn't actually real Italian food, just foods. So it's both. He's saying both.
Anything racial. He just meant like
authentic.
I just want to go to real African restaurants, which actually was not the quote. And the quote said nothing about, hey, let's not go to this place. I want real African food.
Yeah, we're going to the real jerk center.
I don't want to be caught dead at a place that's known for black fare. Okay. This is just yet another example of the sophistry.
Yeah.
And actually, would help Zulu's video if he actually rightfully understood that it's Nick who's employing those grifting, sophistic tactics that he breaks down in the first part of his video, which is when you get called out directly for what you said, you distract and you deny that you actually said that. Or you say, I didn't mean that. Okay, I did say that, but you misinterpreted it. That's not the meaning. And then you come up with some totally fake meaning that's not true.
Right, and in his case, like, he tried his best to come up with something on the spot, like, oh yeah, it's just not authentic cuisine, like Olive Garden's authentic Italian, which literally has zero to do with those prior statements. Like, those prior statements in no way, shape, or form reflected like, oh yeah, this is just not real lobster here.
I mean, that's what he's saying with when he's saying it's black fare. He's saying, I mean, it perhaps is racist to say this, right? He's saying like, no, it's like slop, basically. That's what he's saying, right? I mean, how fucking old is Nick Fuentes? He's like, what, 30 or some shit? When he was a kid, his father must be fucking ancient. Like, it's not particularly like surprising. Like, oh, somebody born in like the fucking 20s, the 30s is gonna be perhaps, probably maybe later than that. Gonna be perhaps not, PC in their language.
We got to go to like authentic Caribbean,
or real African food.
Or this is real African food. It's nothing to do with it. It's literally just I would be caught dead going to a place where people of darker skin eat.
Yep.
And then using racial epithets on top. Which of course he won't bring that part up again, because if he brings that up again, there's no way around that one, right? If you're calling the N word, there's no way to say, well, that was really because we wanted to go to the real place. There's just no way around that one. So
I would say Nick is the great example of sophistic tactics, of grifting tactics, of how you can say so much stuff, and then when you're called out directly, you either deny and you start attacking the other person again, just another fallacy, another fallacious tactic. Or when you are caught red-handed and you can no longer deny, you twist it and you make it sound like, oh, well, that's not what you meant. So you try to pretend there's a different meaning than there was than what you originally presented.
Yeah.
My best friend in first grade was a black guy. We're not a racist family. So
wow. Okay.
My best friend when I was 2 years old.
Yeah, because
see, I'm not racist, and everything I've ever said about Jews and blacks and Asians.
What's the assertion there? So you were friends with someone in the first grade that then determined the rest of your philosophy for life. What you believe.
Well, I mean, so surely the fact that there are black grifters, I mean, it's the question of what is being meant by racist, I think. Is it meaning that he, hates all black people? And wasn't he like friends with Kanye? Right? Like, I think he's mostly saying that he doesn't want to live in black communities, that black communities have these problems. And in fact, I think he explicitly says this, that black people also don't want to live in black communities, because when they get money, they leave the black communities, white communities. But I think it is worthwhile for him to bring this up, Especially Pierce is going to be making like the born of a racist and you'll die a racist, that type of argument. It's like, well, I mean, then how do you account for these facts?
In the first grade of your relationships, those stay the same forever. It's immutable. That's his assertion, the unstated assertion of that statement, which is of course ridiculous.
Money has to go all the way back to first grade.
First grade, yeah, not now, not like
when I was 6.
My friend, whatever,
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. It's
just yet another distraction to make it to the untrained eye again, untrained ear, to just be like, oh yeah, see, he had a best friend in 6th grade when he was 6 years old, first grade.
Dememsia, what is this random dog doing? That's my puppy. Somebody wanted to see my puppy. So I posted a picture of my puppy.
How could he be racist and change from a 5 or 6 year old in first grade? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, again, the point, the argument was, you're a racist because your father, when you were a kid, was a racist. Like, okay, well, is it not legitimate then to bring back, well, I was friends with blacks when I was a kid? You know?
just so funny.
It's so funny.
How he's like,
Okay, so when you told the story, I'm just curious. So when you told that anecdote, which clearly on the face of it is racist, right? You're basically saying your father made racist decisions about where you would go as a family to eat. Are you saying, well, I'm just going to ask you a question. Are you saying that when you told that story, you didn't mean to infer that he was racist? And do you understand why when somebody like me reads that anecdote for the first time, as I did this week, I reach a different conclusion?
And I just want to say, like, I don't like that Pierce is giving him even an out here, because he's done it like several times at this point.
Yeah.
He's trying to like, well, did you really mean that? Right? At this point where he's denied several times and he's like furling his lips like a little, you know, like devil there. He's trying to weasel his way out of it. He knows that he really believes it, that his Nick believes it, but he doesn't want to, you know, punch people in the face with the hard, like, yeah, you know, get like right off the cuff. He wants to, you know, slowly boil him into it. So it's just so frustrating that, you know, Pierce is trying to give him an out. It's like, well, did you really mean that? Because
I know, like, you still tried to
on the face, it literally means that. So it's like, yeah.
Well, I understand what you're doing, which is a sort of making of a murderer. How did he become racist? Well, his father
No,
didn't
I'm
eat
literally
Olive
reading
Garden
out-
because he
no,
said
no,
that's
hang
not
on.
real Italian
Hang on,
food.
hang on.
Can I-
No, I'm reading-
And there
not
it
really
is.
telling
And there it is, right? Another sophistry.
There
He's
it is.
completely moved the goalpost. The words that he's using don't match.
Again, so he's still doing what I'm saying, that he's calling out what is happening. And then, you know, I'm pretty sure if you unpause the clip there, and he's like, sure very soon after that, he's like, okay, well, now we can go on to talking about that. And no, he already did that. It's like, no, my father wasn't a racist. We're not a racist family. Like, that is the answer to the question. And then he goes back around again. Right? I'm trying to remember what it was and rereading through the script here. Griffin won for $5 US. Thank you very much. I remember when someone said the entire housing market is based on how far you can get from them.
What he said, and had nothing, you know, it's not real Italian food, nothing to do with what was said at all on 2 accounts.
Yeah, the quote was not, this is not real African food. We're going to a real African food establishment. It's,
No.
Don't be caught dead. At a place
Applebee's
for Black Fair.
and Red Lobster, and yeah, we're not going to go where that, you know, N-words are.
Yeah,
so
he's a
yeah.
gaslighting
sophist.
Yeah.
And
Manipulator.
that's what he does. Like, oh, you're making out to be a murderer, right? An escalation, right? Another level of diversion. Oh, now it's murder. It's not just, hey, I'm racist. Oh, you're saying I'm a murderous person.
Right.
Oh.
No. He's not escalating. He's saying you're doing this making of a murderer thing. Or this thing where it's like, well, his father was a racist, so he's a racist, and his children will be that's like the phrase. You're doing this making of a murderer thing. What made this person into what they are? He's not saying that Piers is calling him a murderer.
You know, so again, when someone doesn't have an argument, they
just attack the other person.
Deflect,
Right.
Move the goalposts, change the context, anything they can do to weasel their way out of it.
Yep.
Literally,
Can I
I'm
explain?
literally reminding you of something you said on your show,
Right.
which led me,
Well, and
which
it
led
was
me to
said in
conclude a
jest.
certain thing.
There it is again.
So
Another goalpost move. First, it's not what I meant to. Oh, well, it was a jest, right? It's
That's not a goalpost move. He's saying, that's not what I meant. It was said in jest. Those are actually entirely compatible. If something was said in jest, then it's not really what you meant.
clown nose on, clown nose off to manipulate people.
Right. And Pierce, you can see how this unfolded. First, he's presented with the evidence. And at first, he doesn't want to address and say that he did say that. He just wants to paint it as, oh, you're just attacking me. And so after the third time of Pierce saying, dude, I'm just quoting what you said, then Nick has to respond because he's like, okay, all my previous attempts to say he's just attacking me, he's just not bringing up real evidence, I didn't actually say that,
Right.
you know, it didn't work. Now he's like, okay, I have to just say what I said. And okay, yes, I did say those things, but you know, it's just a joke.
Right. You have to minimize that point.
That's his last weasel tactic is like, okay, will this work? Will he just, you know, ignore the evidence of what he heard and just go, okay, it was just a joke.
Right. Oh, it's just a joke. Yeah. I'm telling people a story about my childhood with very specific details about how my father treated situations and what was presented to me as, you know, normal family living. Okay. Just a joke.
Oh, tell me.
Yeah, it was said in jest as a humorous anecdote, and now you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is his parents are racist. He comes from a long line of racists. And I think everybody...
There it goes again, right? Long line of racists. So hyperbole, exaggeration,
That's what Piers is trying to do here. That's very clearly what Piers is indeed trying to do here. Right? Take this one, like, humorous anecdote and then spin it out into this big tale father was a racist, you were born a racist, you'll die a racist, your entire bloodline will be racist. That's been the thing the whole time.
Try to make it worse and worse, extrude it out as much as possible, instead of just being very narrowly focused. Hey, your dad presented this type of way of thinking to you as a kid. Do you think that may have impacted you in terms of how you think about racial relations?
It was very narrow of a question. Do you think that impacted you?
Right.
Because I have this.
Right, it's very narrow of a question, and the question I have is, what is the motivation behind that question? What is Piers trying to construct here? Piers isn't a retard, right? I don't think Piers is retarded. He is very good at interviewing people. He knows how to do it. There's a purpose behind everything he's doing. What is the purpose behind this line of questioning? He's trying to poison the well. He's trying to build up this narrative that Nick Fuentes is, in effect, a genetic racist. Right? And this is his first line of questioning. So that for the rest of the interview, you've got in the back of your head, Nick Fuentes is genetically racist. Right? He's not explicitly stating that. Right? He's using this poetry to paint around it, to give this image in the viewer's head, that viewpoint, that Nick Fuentes was always going to think these things. So therefore, I don't have to listen to him. That's what he's doing. He's poisoning the well.
From interviewing many people, this come to understanding that a lot of people are influenced by their upbringing.
Right.
Like most people are a product of their upbringing. That's what his experience has told him. And so he's giving that very specific evidence and example. But Nick wants to say, oh, see, you're trying to assert that I come from a long line of racists. Well, no, that's not what he's saying. In fact, it was just, he didn't even say a long line. He just said his father. That's not a long line. That's not like all the way back to, the 1600s. You've been a racist family. He didn't say anything like that. There is no.
Right. Because he's using the poetry to paint that picture in the mind of the viewer, and Nick is explicitly stating that picture for the viewer. And that's the tactic that I'm talking about. Okay, well, Microsoft tech support fuck here said, I respect Dave Smith, SAR, ZZ. What did you get? Did you get that on your tech support?
Attack against your entire bloodline. It's saying, hey, I heard these anecdotes about your childhood, your own words, and it made me wonder if this had an influence on you and could have contributed to why you're racist today.
Right, in terms of those
not what he's painting it as.
Those framings, and it's like, and if he wants to say, of course, and Nick wants to say, oh yeah, I'm not a racist whatsoever, and then it'd be like, okay, and then how do you pair that with these statements? And then of course you can bring in more things that Nick has said, which there's so many of those.
Yeah.
I mean that, but
my parents are boomers. Mm-hmm. And these people come, well, you're a boomer, I guess, too. And then, right? You were born in 19. Yeah, so you're a boomer also. Or maybe you're a Gen Xer. I suppose it's sort of on the cusp. But it's a humorous anecdote. These are kind of the attitudes of baby boomers in society. But you're trying to spin it into a...
There it goes. Instead of it being specific about him and his situation, his upbringing, now it's, well, everybody's racist if you're a boomer. This is just the norm.
And then by saying Pierce is a boomer, he's implying that Pierce
is also a racist, right? So you miss, like,
he's saying, like, you'll know, like, this is the kind of attitude that, is, prominent with these people. I mean, zoom back into like the 60s and ask if that would be, a controversial statement. Like, no, that's black fair. Like, would that be controversial? Probably not that controversial,
Really, because everything he can to deflect,
right,
distract, put it on other people. Oh no, I'm not the one. You guys are. You're the real racist. Everybody's racist. And now I'm going to be racist too. He's doing everything he can because he doesn't want people to actually realize that Pierce has found an uncomfortable truth that he thought that he could tell his inside people and his show people, and they were just like, that's funny. But on the outside, to people who are not into that, they'd be like, oh, okay, that kind of shows that your upbringing may have led you to have the attitude you kind of do. Your typical racist jokes and oftentimes political statements, because he makes political statements too that are racially charged.
Yeah.
Narrative, which is you're a product of your environment, your dad's racist because of this joke, now you're a racist, and I don't think that's a fair characterization. Okay, people can make their own minds up. They can go back and listen to you say it again.
So finally, Nick summarized what Pierce said at the end. It took finally all where they there for him to actually say, like, imagine Nick had said that from the beginning. You're actually making this argument, right?
That's what he was doing. Like, the thing Nick just said there was, you're trying to paint this characterization, that might, let me just hear it explicitly.
Political statement racist, and I don't think that's all racially charged.
Yeah.
Narrative, which is you're a product of your environment, your dad's racist because of this joke, now you're a racist, and I don't think that's a fair characterization. Okay.
Yeah, so that is the making of the murderer type of deal. You're a product of your environment, your dad was a racist because of this joke, now you're also a racist. Like, That's exactly what he's been saying this whole time. Like how that's literally what he was saying. Like, am I reading too much into this? Am I like, you know, bedazzled by Nick's dreamy eyes here or something? Like, I think that's what he's been saying, you know?
People can make their own minds up. They can go back and listen to you say it
Again.
So finally, Nick summarized what Pierce said at the end. It took finally all where they there for him to actually say, like, imagine if Nick had said that from the beginning. You're actually making this argument, right? And then what was his response? That's not a fair characterization. That's it. No reason, no evidence, no, and here's what I think differently, and here's why he wasn't, here's why I'm not. It's just that's not a fair characterization. Nothing substantive. And it took him all the way to the end to get to even just having a contradiction, right? Not an argument, just a contradiction. Like if someone says no, but they don't give a reason, you're just contradicting them. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. That's it. So
The weaseling didn't work.
The weaseling didn't work.
Like crap.
So all he could do is just say, well, this is your argument. That's not fair. Okay.
It's like a sports game. You can see what happens when you hold the sophist to the fire. You keep like reminding them of evidence. They can only weasel so much until they have to respond to you and your evidence straight on, because they're like, shoot, no matter how many times I deflect, you keep bringing up the source evidence. Stop it.
Right.
So, okay.
And that's the most powerful thing. It's I've seen it done many times. You bring up something that's evidence that's really uncomfortable for somebody. You keep pushing it in their face because they can't handle it, and it will make them skizz out essentially. Because if you have something that's really strong and it's empirical and people can go look it up, then it's game over.
Yep.
All that Nick has to do is continue with the strategy of unmasking what Piers is trying to accomplish. And without that mask, Piers is left to tuck his tail and slink off onto the next topic.
So wrong, because that's the opposite.
The opposite, actually.
The one who's slinking off with his tail between him is Nick. The one who's employing all these sophisticated tactics is Nick.
Yeah, Nick's the one who just has to walk away from the topic like, well, it's not a fair characterization, and with all his, mannerisms and like,
Really what happened, though? That just isn't... Like, Nick was very confident throughout this whole interview. It was Piers Morgan that has, like, the passive defensive body language. I guess Piers Morgan is, like, looking down and, like, kind of shrinking away. Like, am I just autistic or blind or something? I don't know. Well, let me know, guys, if I'm completely misreading that interview.
and weaseling into his body. Piers is the one who's also, he's a bit, I think, frustrated at this point and flustered with what Nick's doing.
Definitely.
But he's the one who actually keeps bringing it back to, yeah, but this is what you said, so what's the specific reason and evidence why I'm wrong about interpreting it this way?
Yeah.
Nick doesn't have it because it's real.
Yep. So all he can do is attack.
Yep.
When you corner a sophist, all they can do is attack your character, just like, in fact, the last two videos we did, which also we're responding.
I mean, it's also the point, like, I don't think Nick Fuentes is, like, afraid of being radical on, like, these questions. Like, I'm pretty sure at some point in the interview he says, like, yeah, I am a racist or some shit. Like, so it's not even that, it's that he just didn't like this tactic being employed by Piers. Like, who knows, right? We can't peer into the alternate reality of if Piers Morgan had just said, like, you know, are you a racist, Nick? And he hadn't tried the tactic. He hadn't tried any of this. Like, paint the picture in the mind of the viewer. They just said, okay, like, in fact, are you a racist? You know, however you want to define that. It's entirely possible you just said, yeah. We just had Jeremy Kauffman on before. If you ask Jeremy Kauffman, are you a racist? He'll tell you. Well, by certain definitions of the word racist, yes, I am a racist. Like, radicals aren't, like, afraid of that. Oh, the real Kaya Piker is here. You should know. Here's my little puppy in the corner there. This is my shock collar for the puppy. See, I press the button and you can hear. That keeps him within a 1 foot by 1 foot square on the ground I've got over there. Everything else around it is electrified.
To Liquid Zulu's videos that he made, but in those cases it was about Dave Smith, not Liquid Zulu. It just happened to be one of his videos. So keep up the great work, Liquid Zulu. We like your philosophical breakdowns, and just want
Thank you.
To, point out that we found a mistake here in your thinking, and it's actually the opposite example that you think it is. But just like Dave Smith, Nick does those same tactics where you bring up evidence as to what they said, and at first what they do is they just deflect. They're crazy, I never said that, blah blah blah. But then when you actually say it to them, the actual quote, and they can't deny it anymore because it's literally the words that they said, all they can do is say, well, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that you're worthy of killing and you're as bad as a commie or Nazi. I didn't mean that. It was said in jest, just like Nick says here. Okay, you caught me. I did say that. It was said in jest, right? Just another tactic when they're caught red-handed. It's just funny what sophists do.
This technique may be employed whether the accusation is true or false. In the case of Nick's father being a racist, he maintains that it is false, so it is essential that he employs it before moving on to proving that falsehood. But there is another path to go down when the accusation is true, and one that I admire and use very frequently. Simply stating your agreement and telling the world that you are a radical who is not going to back down, as Nick demonstrates at several points.
Would you like to clarify what you meant then?
It's all true. That's 100% true. Everything I said in that clip is true.
You're basically saying, yeah, I'm a racist, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm
There you go.
fine with that.
See, that's the
And there you go. We just watched the whole, like, this is kind of a
Again, so this is, you have to question, like, what is the difference between those two ways of asking the question? The difference is that Piers was just straight up asking, and he was able to just straight up get an answer. At the very least, Nick is maintaining that his father is not a racist. And this is a very common tactic. Now, you know, people will try and destroy the lives of your family because they don't like your beliefs. So, because his father isn't there to defend himself, he's got to go like, no, my father's not a racist. Right? And also wants to reject the whole slime ball tactic that Piers was employing there.
fascinating, I would say, expose into the manipulating people through sophistry, right? That whole, I'm going to gaslight you, I'm going to manipulate you, I'm going to weasel, and then you're going to kind of like get on my side or get emotionally, and then you're going to accept what it is, right? That's really what Nick's doing there, is he's trying to get people to get on his side emotionally, but then move the Overton window and just accept whatever it is that he says at the end, right? Because he wants people to accept what he has to say. He wants people to believe what he has to say. But to achieve his ends, he can't always be forthright because, as I think Liquid correctly points out here, he is, comparatively to normies, a radical in his vein. So he has to get people acclimated to what he's saying piecemeal, and he does that by kind of pretending like he's like more normal, attacking the person, and then trying to make it seem like, okay, well, you know what, my ideas aren't that bad. Yeah, you want to call me racist? Well, whatever, I'm racist, and that's fine. But you know what I mean? He tries to own it, but that's his way of getting people to accept it. That's the real manipulation that Nick is engaged in here.
Yeah, it's wild. He denies the whole time that he's racist. He's like, stop painting my family as racist. They're not racist. What I said wasn't racist at all. It was actually about my dad saying...
No, he's saying what his dad said wasn't racist.
He wants to go to a better Italian restaurant, which is completely not what he said.
Right, so there's two different allegations there. One allegation is your dad's a racist. The other allegation is you're a racist. And he's fine taking on the you're a racist allegation, but not that your dad's a racist or allegation. You know, like don't be saying that my mum sells Avon. You know?
And then when he keeps getting exposed, all he can do is say, okay, yeah, it was racist. It was racist story. It's all true. And I am racist. That's what Nick is saying.
Right. And then some people will probably be like, well, he's just accepting those labels just because he doesn't really think that about himself. But the reality is the actions and the rhetoric align with that. The goal is to shift the Overton window into acceptability, to get people to say, oh, no, he's just joking. But then the joke becomes real, right? Like kind of like someone who like jokes with like, you know, sitting there hitting on a girl and like, oh, I you know, do this thing with you, you know, oh, just kidding, unless you're into it kind of thing, right? It's like testing the waters. It's how that radicalization message works, right? I'm just joking. Oh, unless, do you like it? You like it? Oh, you do like it? Well, okay,
yeah,
I'll go a little further.
If Pierce was attacking him and his family like he was asserting that Pierce was doing, why would he give in to a quote-unquote attack?
Indian is the best and most productive race. Well, I mean, if we listen to the white nationalists, clearly it's the Jews, like, because the Jews control everything. Clearly, they're the best race. I don't know. If we're going to be racial supremacists, then that's what we got to go for.
And be like, okay, I am racist, when he was denying the whole time.
That's a flip-flop.
He wouldn't do
if
that.
He was actually really believing that, which is
it actually shows within this clip. The grifting example is Nick. He's the one flip-flopping. He's the one at first trying to paint himself as, I'm just a normal person with boomer parents, and it's normal for boomers to be racist. Pierce, you're a boomer.
Yeah.
Pierce is like, I'm 60. And he's like, so implying that Pierce is racist, you know, like all he can do is just pretend that he's not and be like, just believe me, Pierce is the crazy one. Look at my hand gestures. Just hopefully you'll believe me and see that I'm a moderate. But at the end, he's like, okay, I'm actually racist. So he's the one who flip-flops.
Right.
I'm not a
the reality
racist.
of your jokes. Although I haven't ascertained yet whether you are joking when you say that Hitler was very fucking cool. Are you joking, or do you actually think he was very fucking cool? The most genocidal
I remember this clip. I think he was very fucking a monster.
monster of the last 150 years.
Yeah, the thing is, my generation, we're just done with the pearl clutching. You know,
Yeah, you might be, but your generation hasn't gone through what Danny Finkelstein's family went through. So
Yeah.
maybe the pearl clutching has a way to go. The families whose family members.
Oh my
were
gosh,
murdered.
yeah, we got all that. We, you know, me mom, like we're, you know, I don't even know who this person is.
I just want to point out the tactic here. Another tactic that sophists use is they say we. They try to collectivize their position as if, and speak for everyone else, because obviously we're part of that generation. No, not every.
I mean, it is kind of true. Like, Generation Z doesn't really care as much I mean, maybe that's just me because I don't really care that much about like Israel, Palestine, blah 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 blah. But I mean, I think it is the case that, you know, the kind of the mythos surrounding it has kind of collapsed a little bit. You know, the founding myth of the Western world. That's all I believe.
Everyone in your generation thinks like.
What are you guys even arguing about? So this is a video, assuming you're talking to me. This is a video by Philosopher and Jack Lloyd. They're saying that I got Nick Fuentes wrong in my video on grifting. That I was wrong to use him as an example for how to deal with grifters.
You and thinks Hitler is.
Yeah, you don't care about the Crusades yet. I mean, and that's like the thing, is like, okay, you know, how many Palestinians care about the Troubles? Right? Do they really deeply care about the Troubles? Let's even move away from Palestinians. You know, how many Saudis care about the Troubles? Like, really to their heart care about the Troubles? I mean, the Troubles was very, very, very bad. You know, there were a bunch of bombs and shit going off all the goddamn time. Very, very bad stuff. I recognize, though, I'm not so arrogant that I would assume everybody's going to care about that as much as I would care about that. You know, because obviously I have much greater proximity to that situation than somebody who grew up in goddamn Islamabad. Or like, obviously I am going to care more about that. I care more about things that are closer to me. I think that's only rational to do. I just don't buy this whole thing that, well, because you're a libertarian, you've got to care deeply about like Israel, Palestine, or about the Holocaust, or about Ukraine versus Russia, all of these other things. I just do not care.
Really fucking cool. Like, they don't think like you.
Exactly.
And it's a manipulation tactic to inflate yourself and make your argument sound more correct by saying, see, I'm not the only one who believes this. You know, everyone's against data centers. It's a way to make yourself sound like you have more.
I mean, it's also, the other thing is, Nick Fuentes is clearly enormously popular, especially among the youth, right? His audience is mostly the youth. So clearly there's something to what he's saying. Like, he can speak from a position of authority there because he is very popular. He knows his audience analytics. Like, I doubt that he's popular among the boomers, right? I think they're probably mostly just Trumpists, right? I think he can speak about that. It's like that Jordan Peterson clip where it's like, oh, well, how can you say how are you able to speak with such authority on this issue? It's like, well, because I'm a psychologist. I'm a very well-cited psychologist, so I know about this stuff. You know, like, sometimes you genuinely do know about things.
More of an argument than you do. It's
bandwagoning fallacy, essentially being
sophistry.
like, oh yeah, everybody's doing it, everybody agrees. It's a common manipulative tactic, just be like saying, you know, we, everybody, or if you're using the negative, nobody thinks that, or only the worst people, right? It's loading it always to use generalizations because that has an effect on people subconsciously to get them to think, oh wow, everybody's doing this or nobody thinks this. It's on the untrained mind who doesn't have critical thinking. It can be very effective as a manipulation tactic to try to use this gross generalization and glittering generalities to make it seem like as if your position is just, oh yeah, that's what we all think,
like, that's just my generation.
Right. Not that you're making your own arguments and have to present your own evidence.
Everyone of my generation loves Hitler. Everyone of my generation doesn't care that people were murdered.
Right. So it's just sophistry on top of sophistry.
It's because he doesn't want to actually say what he believes and say, I think this, and actually defend his position. Again, he's just attempting to distract by attacking Pierce and saying, oh, you just stop. You're just manipulative. No one in my generation is falling for you. So here he is trying to weasel his way out of it again.
Yeah.
Why is this person talking to me? This old British guy is saying, my mom got killed by Hitler.
If he doesn't find it funny when you say Hitler's very fucking cool.
I don't care. I don't care.
You don't care. That's fine. You don't have to care. He does care.
Does that guy care about America? Does that guy care about me and my country and my family? No.
He cares what you, a prominent conservative in America.
So
doesn't care about me and my family. Again, dude, the original quote is, you think Hitler's effing cool. And you just came off by saying, oh, the previous thing I said about my dad and that anecdote, I said it in jest. I was just kidding.
Yeah.
Like,
and so
he's just doing it again where he refuses to address his actual statement and defend it and be like, here's why I believe it. Instead, he's like, oh, I don't care. This person doesn't care about America first. At any turn, he just wants to weasel out of actually defending the initial evidence.
I mean, it's true. It's why, you know, why does a person need to, like, as deeply care about the Holocaust as somebody whose parents were in the Holocaust? I don't think that everybody has that same burden to care as much about it. I just don't. Like, that's just, That just seems silly to me.
Evidence presented.
Right. And then when he says things that clearly contradict those other statements, he just rolls with it because he knows that he's appealing to his core audience, obviously at that point, and he's again trying to shift it over to window. Right. You're crazy. Oh, and everybody loves Hitler.
There can be a man with African genealogy who looks entirely white. Yeah, me. Obviously, as we all know, Cheddar Man was the first Briton. He was a black man. So British people are black. So I am a black man as well.
Like it's a new TV show.
Everyone in my generation does.
Yeah, everybody. So
because it's America first, like oddly, his argument is trying to say like everyone in my generation loves Hitler because they're America first. What?
Right.
That's the insanity of Nick and his audience. Like they just twist reality.
Exactly. So and I'm going to leave it there in terms of Liquid Zulu's video, just for the sake of everything. But that's kind of summarizing what it was that we felt really flustered with, was that while it was a good big picture concept for Liquid Zulu to try to think about, like, oh, what's a good way to defend against sophistry? What's a good way to try to counter people who want to demonize you? Which I think is a great thing to think about. The way that it was done by Nick was the sophistry.
Yeah, and that's what we want to.
He's also a really bad person, which of course, Liquid Zulu says that he has his first caveat saying like we don't agree with basically anything that he says, which is fine. But maybe a little more emphasis was needed by the end of that, or re-emphasis at the end of that.
It was because the second half of that video was basically trying to say Nick is good at defending against sophistry. The evidence that Zulu's presenting is actually an example of Nick being a sophist.
Nick's a great sophist.
Being a manipulative weasel.
A great weasel.
Trying to avoid actually addressing things that he's actually said.
Once again, because that was also in conjunction with this section was talking about specifically. Here is, him being a radical, endorsing radicalism. And that's a lesson we can definitely learn from Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, there's a reason why he was so goddamn successful, right? It wasn't because he was a pragmatist. It wasn't because he's, kind of couching his words. He's saying it, That's why people are drawn to him. I think that's worthwhile.
And doing the manipulative thing of attacking Pierce and trying to make Pierce look bad. And so that's why we had to call it out, because it's a great video to talk about grifting and sophistry. But it was definitely an error to say that Nick was actually the one being philosophical here. So that was just an error. I feel like Zulu could totally make that video again, use the same clip, but the narration is like, okay, different. It's, okay, see how Pierce defends against sophistry by bringing it back to evidence and the original evidence that he presented. See how Nick is the one trying to deflect and put words.
Yeah, but that's the complete opposite of the point that I'm making, though. The point that I'm making with this tactic, roll back, is to not proceed with the discussion until you pointed at the elephant in the room. Pierce doesn't do that, clearly.
Words in Pierce's mouth and make Pierce look crazy by doing these hand gestures. Yeah. Like that would actually fit into your video then if you
a little bit more.
Showed that tactic on Pierce's side. So,
and just to emphasize, our independent claim that Nick here is a liar manipulator, I'm gonna use his own words, emphasizing his promotion of lying manipulating. So just a quick clip of him just showing you, because of course we like using reason and evidence, that is the way that he operates normally.
I want our story to be these ruthless fanatics that did absolutely everything and anything, and in the end they pulled it off because they were the most serious about winning. That's the story that I want to hear. I want to hear the story about those people that lied, cheated, and stole. And they went on the battlefield and they were innovative and they were progressive and they left nothing on the field. And they did things that people never even imagined a person could do. And in the end, they took power and changed history. That's the story I want to tell. I want our story.
So yeah, lying, cheating.
Yes, I mean, I don't deny this about the Groypers. They're very explicit about this strategy, where they try and take over the institutions. They try and hide their power level. They try and do all this type of stuff. I think it's a bad strategy. That's why I didn't mention it in the video, because I don't think it highlights a good strategy. I think it's a bad strategy because I think it's fundamentally like a Gail Winan type strategy. You're not getting actual, an actual base, an actual power there. You're just not. That's a mistake. I got a man shammer for another 200 rupees. Thank you very much. Wanted to announce good news I got. I'm now monetized. Supers and memberships right now, so that's on the Rational Frontier channel. I'm so thankful to Zulu and everyone else for the support. I'll now focus on making the content quality better. Well, thank you very much, and good luck with that.
Manipulating, do things that you couldn't imagine, which I don't think he's talking about riding on a unicorn or something.
That example actually, I think, demonstrated what he does. He believes what he does. He wants leaders who are willing to lie, cheat, and steal for power.
Yep.
That's what he's saying here. We're not asserting it. He literally said this verbatim by himself. You just saw the clip.
Yeah.
And he's showing you that he will employ those tactics of lying, manipulating, and cheating, just like he did to Pierce by saying, "Oh, I never said that. Okay, finally, okay, I did say it, but I didn't mean it like that." That's all being a liar and manipulator. So
right, and the reason why Nick's rhetoric goes over so well is he reaches the disaffected Gen Zers who had their lives ruined by the lockdowns and shutdowns, like all the young people who missed out on whatever it was, could have been prom, graduation, whatever big event in their life during, between 2019 and 2024, all the craziness that happened, the peak of the SJW nonsense and all the government, nonsense. They had their lives taken from them by the government, of course, manipulating people, lying to people, destroying the economy, demonizing, many people who, are like young, white men, that kind of thing. So it makes sense why Nick has an attractive voice to those people. It's just that Nick's voice against the peace and prosperity and property rights ethic that actually makes people better off and gives them a fulfilling life with freedom and, exactly what it is they would like to have if they had their property rights respected and were able to choose what it is they did with their, resources, that when the government takes from you and denies you that and then destroys your savings, with intentional inflation policy, yeah, you're going to be really miffed and you're going to be looking for answers and looking for a way out of that. And there are many opportunists who saw that and then decided to predate upon that, but not with something that isn't, an ethical advocacy, not with something that actually solves the root problems, with their own new form of state central planning, social manipulation, control, and that kind of thing. And that's exactly
why he's like, let's vote for Democrats.
Exactly. I mean,
let's align with Democrats.
He has no character. He has no moral fiber whatsoever. He is completely Machiavellian. Do anything for power. Lie, way, cheat, steal your way to power. Manipulate who you need to. And his message plays well, I think, to people who are a little bit more socially dim. Say the least. People who can't
not philosophically grounded.
When you're not grounded in the critical thinking and you don't pick up on the cues and the social cues and the language nuances, it can be easy to get gaslit into that. Like, oh yeah, he's not really that bad. Nick's not that bad.
He's like follow the most powerful sounding voice.
Yeah. So
you're not actually going based off of philosophy.
Yeah.
And to Zulu's video, which we were just showing, it's about trying to say, here's the anatomy of a grifter. Well, a great example of one is Nick. In fact, one of the things as he just said, I'm willing to lie, cheat, and steal, and I want leaders who are willing to lie, cheat, and steal for power. That's precisely what grifting is all about. Grifting is about just saying the talking points of whatever popular culture or issue.
Yeah, but I don't think Nick quite fits the grifter archetype. I think Nick is a conversation maker more than he's a conversation follower. The grifter, in my video, is really a conversation follower. They're following wherever the temperature is going. I don't think that quite describes Nick. He is in error, certainly. But that's not quite the type of error that he's engaged in. He is to some degree, obviously, with all whining type strategies. But it's not done quite line up. DM, I'm not sure for 1000 CLP, if you can just remake... Pardon me. If you can just remake it and lie to yourself. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but thank you very much. Nick is somewhat a grifter, but it's not relevant here. Yeah, because I mean, the main point is they knew how to deal with grifters, and that's what I'm trying to show there.
Is around saying those talking points. You may not actually believe it, but the goal is to get power. So that's precisely what Nick is doing. So we just had to call it out. It's like, dude, this is not someone who is philosophical at all. He is the opposite. He's an example of sophistry. He is not an example of how to counter sophistry. He is the example of sophistry. And so we just want to make this because, like seeing Zulu, someone who's normally very philosophical, be misled that way. We saw that as something that's important to call out because there's definitely other people too in the comments. Some people did see that Pierce wasn't being sophistic, but others did because they have the same bias that Zulu has against Pierce and others, and just start to idolize Nick as if he's some truth warrior when he's the complete opposite. And just listen to his words. He's willing to lie, cheat, and steal steal in order to have power.
And I want to reel that back because I don't think idolizing is a good word. I don't think he's saying that.
Okay, it just felt like it at the end of the video.
You could, by the end of it, of course, feel like, are you promoting him? Like, you would think by the end, it's just so much in favor of him without any caveats. You could think that. You could think that. But I would think that based on, at least what I've seen so far, it may have just been a miscalculation of giving Nick too much credit about his sophistry and interpreting that as, oh, see, he's doing a good job. It's not really he's doing a good job. He's just being a sophist. And of course, you could be a good sophist. You could be good at lying and manipulating people, as politicians do. But that's not something that's sustainable. That's not something that's going to build you, philosophical thinkers who can sustain liberty, because those people will be manipulated by new sophistry, right?
Again, it's mostly about how do you maintain pathos, and Nick is undoubtedly good at maintaining pathos. So if you're going to have a section of a video studying how to maintain pathos, like even if both of them were grifters, even if we want to say that, yeah, both Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan are both grifters, would there not still be an interesting case study in there of how to deal with grifter tactics? Why is that not available to us? Like, I think we should definitely look into that.
Sophistry, who's the better person at making you feel good? Who's the better person at one-upmanship and making jokes and this or that? Tricking people emotionally instead of really thinking about the truth of things. And okay, what's the evidence for that? Is there a causal relationship? So
yeah, I think more so Zulu just frankly missed it. His thinking erred. He was incorrect in thinking that Nick was the one defending against sophistry. So hopefully this helps Zulu and or his audience, anyone see like, oh, okay, they were duped. They were emotionally manipulated to think that Pierce was attacking when he was actually presenting evidence of what he said and direct quotes. So,
yeah. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for enjoying this.
Yeah, I suppose check out I'll link the original video. Yeah, it's on the Philosopher channel. Copy. Paste. There you go. That's the original video if you want to go check out that channel. But yeah. Probably just going to head off now, actually. So. Here. Boom. Thank you very much, everybody who came along, especially those who super chatted. And yeah, if you want to see the Jeremy Kauffman interview, I was back at the original beginning of the VOD. So yeah, see you guys.